for July 13th, 2020. Noting that we do have a quorum with the absentee of Ms. Bureau, who has a family illness that she's attending to. Next, we don't have any changes or additions to the agenda.
Did you print the agendas?
Pardon?
That was a member of the public, Mark.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm sorry. You can mute me. It's Sally.
So we will move to public comment. And Dr. Hornak is going to play the role of Secretary Bureau for the evening and call those individuals who signed up for public comment. But before we do that, I would like to mention some of the rules for public comment. And for anyone that would like to address the board, this is the time that you can do so. But keep in mind, this is not a dialogue between you and the board. We won't be responding to you this evening, although we might touch base with you later on. You do have a time limit of 5 minutes. We ask that you be courteous, and we ask that you do not use any employee's name or a student's name. And if you would, please state your name for the record. So with that, Dr. Hornak, I don't know if there's people in the public that have signed up.
We have two people that signed up. One said they would like to speak at 7 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and pause on that one. Is Marcy Abdullah on the call? Okay, and just by chance, is Amy Badoskin on the call, and would she like to speak at this hour? Okay, Mark, and now I'll hand it over to you in case you would like to just generally ask.
Yep. If you didn't sign up, you can still have an opportunity at this point in time to address the board if you would like. So if you do, please state your name. Okay, if I have none, then we will close public comment and we will move to closed session. And board members, we do need roll call votes tonight. So I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. And if you would, please use the language that's provided in the agenda to make your motion.
I make a motion to go into closed session. Do I quote MCL 15.268?
Yes.
Yes.
Section 8E, for us to go into closed session tonight. Thank you.
Second.
I have a first and a second. I don't know if Ms. Dalton, you're going
Yep.
to, okay.
Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Trustee Callaghan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Holgren,
Yes.
Robo,
Yes.
Trustee Perry.
Yes. So with that, Mr. Galbraith, if you could put everybody but the board members and the attorneys into the waiting room, I guess you call it.
You want Peter there too.
Correct. So it'll be just Pete, myself, Mr. Mullins, and the board.
I'm having severe technical issues here today, in case you weren't noticing how I was flailing with my devices. Can you guys hear me?
We
Yeah.
can. Yep.
Okay, I got, the volume is very high and the microphone I think is very low. So tell me if I'm not making sense.
Kevin G, just as a reminder, if you could dial your volume down, I'll
look for an email.
Look for an email from us. Yep. Christine, when we open back up, would you email him? Yep. Okay. Sounds good. Welcome, Mr. Mullins. This is maybe the third or fourth month in a row, and thank you for joining us again.
Certainly. Lisa, can everybody hear me and hear me
Yes.
okay? Good. All right. Does that go for me, Dave?
It's a go. Yeah, we're looking for just a status update on any developments.
So we had agreed to a early on, if you will, facilitation or mediation with the judge magistrate in Grand Rapids. And we spent most of the afternoon talking about the case and what the case might be worth. We didn't get to agreement between ourselves. We were lower, they were higher.
Sure. Trustee Bakken? Bakken?
Yes.
Vice President Colligan?
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren?
Yes.
Trustee Robo?
Yes.
President Perry?
Yes.
Thank you.
Board, do you need a minute to, before we go into the statutory meeting or no?
I'm good.
No.
Where's my mouse?
All right, I'll call to order the Holt Board of Education special meeting for the statutory organizational meeting. Noting that we do have a quorum with the absence of Trustee Bureau, who has previously contacted me, and she's dealing with a family illness, so she's excused. So second on the agenda, we had a first reading at our last board meeting regarding the change in policy in the election of officers, whereby this is normally done at this meeting at this time of the year, and the proposed changes to the policy would be that we would move that to the January board meeting to coincide with new board members that are elected and put into office into January. So I will need a motion, if so desired, to change those bylaws. Trustee Dalton, I don't know, with the absence of Ms. Bureau, if you have any other comments about those two?
Would you like me to read those changes aloud?
Sure.
Okay, so there's two different policies. The first policy, 0152, we are going to add the statement at the first meeting in January. At the beginning of that policy, the rest of the policy proceeds as it normally reads. The second policy is policy 0154. And that policy currently states the board at the organizational meeting shall designate several different instances, and we're changing that to at the July organizational meeting. So we'll insert the word July.
Do we have to make two separate motions? I assume?
Yeah,
Looks like
no,
it.
you could combine the change in bylaw 0152 and the change in bylaw 0154 into one motion.
All right, then I will move that we adopt the policy change to bylaw 0152 and 0154 as described.
Support.
I have a first and second. Trustee Dalton, if you could do a roll call on this.
Sure. Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
That moves us down to the district's legal status, which we know is the Holt Public School. There's no motion or anything that we need to do on that. And then next is setting our regular board meeting dates, which has traditionally been the second Monday of the month. and that will hold true in 2021. And those board meetings are held at the Boardroom Education Center, barring COVID-19. Otherwise, we're on Zoom. So I would entertain a motion to set those dates.
Make a motion to accept the proposed board meeting schedule as proposed.
Or
First and a second, Ms. Dalton, a roll call?
Sure. Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Callaghan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren,
Yes.
Trustee Roble,
yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we need a resolution to call a special board meeting, and you have that in front of you. Basically, it can be called by the president or any two board members. And you see the method of delivery of their request for that board meeting, either electronically, by mail, or in person.
I move that we adopt the procedure to call a special meeting of the board resolution as written.
Or
Second.
At first and a second, Ms. Dalton, if we could do a roll call.
Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Callaghan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren,
Yes.
Trustee Roble,
yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have our depository resolution. These bank accounts are the same as what they were in 19 and 20. Basically, most of our accounts are with PNC Bank. We also have some that are with Dart Bank as well, and one with Merrill Lynch. Also, this policy goes over our investment policies and procedures. And basically, if we're going to invest money, we will use Baker Tilly advisors as they put together a list of what financial institutions are acceptable. And then also the Michigan Revised School Board Code puts restrictions on the investments, and this resolution adopts that. We also name those individuals at different buildings who would be depositor of certain monies that comes into the hands of that building. And basically those are building principals and their secretary in each of those buildings.
As treasurer, I will make the motion to accept the recommendations of the bank relationships and depository resolutions.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Ms. Dalton, a roll call?
Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Callaghan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren,
Yes.
Trustee Roble,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the night depository. Pretty simple that this allows us to be able to make night depository deposits.
Make a motion to accept the night depository resolution.
Second.
I have first and second, Ms. Dalton, a roll call?
Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Callaghan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren,
Yes.
Trustee Roble,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have the appointment of our exterior auditor. And as you remember, we did a RFP and we chose the firm of Maynard Casterson to be the district's auditor. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept Maynard Casterson as outside auditor.
Support.
I have a first and a second. Ms. Dalton, roll call.
Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan.
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren.
Yes.
Trustee Robo.
Pass.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have the appointment of legal advisors. There's two firms that we would use, the Troon Law Firm and Clark Hill.
Make the motion to accept our outside legal partners as Clark Hill and Troon.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Ms. Dalton, a roll call.
Trustee Bakken.
Yes.
Vice President Colligan.
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren.
Yes.
Trustee Robo.
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have the consortium of purchasing entities. These are the entities that the district would go to as far as getting quotes for certain materials rather than going out and doing a RFP to a bunch of different vendors.
I move that we accept the consortium, looks like 12 consortium purchasing entities as listed.
Support.
I have a first and a second. Ms. Dalton, roll call vote.
Trustee Bakken.
Yes.
Vice President Colligan.
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren.
Yes.
Trustee Robo.
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have the appointment of the team physicians, and this is orthopedic rehab specialist, PC, and Michigan State University Health team shall be our team physicians for the 2021 school year.
I move that we appoint the team physicians, orthopedic rehab specialists, and MSU health team as team physicians for 2021.
Can I ask, can I have discussion?
I need a second, then we can have a discussion.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, well, it's 3 years in a row that I've asked about the contract with the rehab group, and I've never received that, and I'm just wondering about what's the process to clarify that process for me.
I'm looking for the contract. I don't know if that sits over here or not. If you want to pause on this, we can potentially do that next month, or if we have a special.
Well, it was just this is the third year, and the other 2 years I was told that they were in the middle of their contract. So how long is the contract for, and when
So,
is it up?
some vary between 3 and 5 years. So I don't know if I have this one.
I would like to pause that till next meeting, please.
I will withdraw my motion.
Well,
my motion until the next meeting.
Dr. Hornak, does each of those two do something different for the district?
One serves as a team doctor, and the other is the trainer.
Athletic trainer. So they're actually two different separate
They are.
entities.
So would we need a named team physician for the new school year? I mean, I would entertain a motion if Michigan State University Health Team is acceptable, that they be named the team physician, and then we come back with orthopedic rehab.
I would accept that also.
Okay, I will amend my motion to appoint MSU University Health Team as team physicians for the 2021 school year.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Roll call, Ms. Dalton.
Trustee Bakken.
Yes.
Vice President Colligan.
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren.
Yes.
Trustee Robo.
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next is the appointment of school physicians, and this is Sparrow Systems Occupational Health Services would be the school physician for the 2021 school year.
I'll move that we appoint the Sparrow Health Systems Occupational Health Services as school position.
Support.
A first and a second. Roll call, Ms. Dalton.
Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have the appointment of the workman's comp physicians. This entity, Sparrow Health Systems, Occupational Health Systems, is the same as named in the school physicians above. And this is for our 2021 school year.
I move that we appoint Sparrow Health Systems Occupational Health Services as workers' comp physicians for 2021.
Support.
I have a first and a second. Roll call, Ms. Dalton.
Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next is the committee and delegate appointments. As you've seen written here, we have not changed these from the previous year. That does, however, change as January. We have moved our elections of officers, so they may change it at that point in time, but between now and January, these would be the appointments. Let me do one more thing there because I thought that was on a different section. We also have delegates to those 4 organizations, the Ingham County Officers School Associations. I'm assuming Trustee Hallgren and Trustee Colligan that you would remain on that.
Yes, I think my schedule, especially if I'm doing almost all Zoom instruction, should permit me to attend the meetings.
And they're going to be Zoom too, I think, so it'll be perfect.
Save a half-hour drive.
Yeah.
All right, I'm taking that as a yes. Ingham Intermediate School District, Trustee Colligan, you good with?
Yes.
And Treasurer Bakken, are you good with the Michigan Association of School Boards?
Yes.
And then lastly, Dr. Hallgren, the Holt Scholarship Committee.
Sure.
All right, perfect. I would entertain a motion for those then.
Make a motion for the appointment of the officers and the committee delegates.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Ms. Dalton, a roll call.
Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have our telephone and electronic participation in board meetings. This just allows that any board member who is physically not present at a board meeting to be so by telephone or electronic means. The only provision to that is that they have prior approval.
I move to adopt the telephone and electronic participation in board meetings as listed.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Ms. Dalton, a roll call.
Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then lastly, number 16, Mr. Bakken usually takes care of this one for us.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a first and a second. Ms. Dalton, one more time.
All righty, Trustee Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
With that, you have a 4-minute break before we start up again. Jennifer, Ben, you back?
I am.
Okay. Well, then I'll call to order the Holt Board of Education regular meeting of July 13th, 2020. Noting that we do have a quorum. All board members are present with the exception of Trustee Bureau, who had contacted me, and she has a family illness she's attending to this evening. Dr. Hornak, I don't know if you had a flag or whether we'll just say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stay
Yeah, there we go.
tuned.
All right.
All right, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
To the
republic
republic for
for which
which
it
it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board, the mission of Holt Public Schools is to innovate, educate, and inspire, empowering all students to make a positive impact in their communities. The vision of the Board of Education and Holt Public Schools is to empower our learning community to make a positive impact on the world. Oop, I'm not visible, sorry. That was interesting.
All right, board members, the changes and additions to the agenda under reports, 5.4, Trustee Dalton will fill in for Amy on this. And under new business, we will add number 6 from our committee of the whole meeting that we did not get to. And that entails looking at our architect, construction manager, and owner's rep. So with that, that leads us to public comment. And for anybody that would have liked to address the board, this is the time that you could do so. Please remember, this is not a dialogue between yourself and the board, so we will not make any comments. However, at a later date, we may follow up with you. There is a 5-minute time limitation per speaker. We ask that you be courteous. We also ask that you do not use any employee's name or students' names. And lastly, if you could, please state your name for the record. People have signed up to speak at this public comment part of our meeting. And Dr. Hornak, would you invite those that did in?
I'll be happy to. Amy Madoskin, you are first.
Do we have Amy? If not, we'll go back to her. Do you have anyone else, Dr.
Sure,
Hornak?
I sure do. Marcy Abdullah.
I am here.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Marcy Abdullah. I'm a teacher at the high school. It is my privilege to share some reflections about returning to school from one of my colleagues at Holt High School. My colleague agreed to let me share this anonymously when I requested, and I've received her permission to make a few edits in the interest of trying to keep to the 5-minute time limit. So I'm reading from her letter. Schools and parents are faced with some major decisions about going back to school in just over a month. Let's get one thing out there right away. Nothing will be the same as it was before. No matter what, people will be unhappy. Teachers, parents, students, athletes, coaches, employers, everyone will suffer and everyone will be forced to adapt. Let's not play the game of who is going to suffer more. It sucks for everyone. Okay, now that we've established that, let's examine our choices. 1, face-to-face instruction 2 to 5 days per week. Okay, so let's discuss the pros. We all agree that most students learn better when they are in a physical classroom with their teacher. Teachers can teach better when they can monitor their students, give immediate feedback, and adjust instruction in real time. Assessments are more secure and student work is most likely done by the student. Students with special needs also benefit from the accommodations they receive at school. Students benefit from the social interaction of being with their peers and their teachers. No one can deny that students being able to attend school also relieves a huge burden on parents, both financially and emotionally. However, I firmly believe that all of the benefits of in-person education will be much different, if not entirely wiped out, by the necessary safety precautions recommended by Governor Whitmer's task force and the CDC. Let's imagine the scenario of going back to school face-to-face in phase 4. My focus is on high school since that is what I know. Classes that rely on discussion, collaboration, and other collaborative learning will look drastically different. Students will not be able to speak or share with partners without shouting to them. They won't be close enough to look at each other's work. We cannot use manipulatives or other individual learning tools unless we want to sanitize them after every class. Teachers are encouraged to maintain a distance of 6 feet from students. So what does that mean for offering feedback or guidance? How will teachers monitor student work while standing 6 feet away? What about the time teachers will now be spending on managing behavior of disengaged students? Before, we spent a decent amount of time policing cell phones, side conversations, and other off-task behaviors. We were lucky when students tuned in for the activities that allowed them to work with their classmates and do novel things with the content. How will we manage students who are now being asked to sit quietly in rows, stay in their seats, not talk to friends, all while we have taken away all of the best parts of learning? I anticipate students feeling bored more than ever before, disengaged, frustrated that they have zero chances to socialize, and are being held accountable for new health and safety routines. I also anticipate teachers feeling even more overwhelmed and burnt out than ever before. Teachers are being asked to do more now than ever with less funding and less support. They will also be living with the fear of this novel virus and the uncertainty and feeling of being sacrificed so that students can have somewhere to go during the day. I can't believe they will be teaching to their potential. Now let's consider the social emotional benefits of in-person learning. Like I mentioned before, socialization in the classroom will be incredibly difficult, if not impossible. What about in between classes? Students will be required to be social distance in the hallways, at their lockers. I can't even begin to think about how we do that. And in the common areas. Lunch will no longer be a time that students can talk or decompress or laugh and enjoy each other's company. Who will be monitoring the students? Is it teachers? When? We are supposed to be cleaning our classrooms in between classes. Or do we just keep them in the same classroom all day? Either way, the benefits from socialization are greatly diminished if we really intend to uphold the safety guidelines that have been set forth. It was discovered in the spring that students felt frustrated and depressed seeing their peers on Zoom or Google Meet when they couldn't interact with them face to face. I imagine these feelings will only increase when they are in the same building or room with their friends, and their teachers are going to insist that they stay away from each other. I also anticipate major negative effects when inevitably schools must close for a confirmed case of the virus. The disruption from switching once again from in-person to e-learning will most likely be chaotic for many teachers, students, and families, if not devastating. I imagine behavior issues will arise as students seek to cope with this strange new environment. Teachers will be forced to deal with mounting discipline issues while trying to monitor social distancing and safety guidelines on top of trying to teach in a completely new way. Okay, option 2, remote learning. We all agree that remote learning doesn't come close to the learning that occurs in a physical classroom with the teacher present. It's also very evident that equity is a major issue for remote learning.
Okay, we're at the 5-minute time limit. Can you wrap it up real quick?
Yep, I've got 2 more paragraphs.
A little less than that.
Okay, there is not much for me to say to argue any of those points. We can do our best to ensure that all students have accessibility to material. Teachers will adapt. Ultimately, both options are terrible. Neither of them will come close to what we are used to as our learning environment. But one option is safer for all parties involved. If we are to choose between the lesser of 2 evils, why not choose the one that does not endanger the lives of everyone involved? Why not choose the one that doesn't risk the health of the entire community, placing the responsibility of maintaining safety guidelines on children and adolescents who do not fully understand the seriousness of the situation? For me personally, the benefits of going back to school face-to-face are far outweighed by the stress of the learning environment. I don't think that this is the case for all teachers, but the idea of trying to teach in this environment feels impossible. And I know we need to adapt and do the best for our student, but it's my opinion that what is best for our students does not include in-person learning at this time. I don't think it's fair to ask teachers to continue to martyr themselves when their lives are literally at stake. Whatever happens, we know that teachers will do their best to adapt and provide meaningful learning experiences for their students, regardless of the challenges they face. I guess I hope that we are given a bit of understanding and grace as we do our best in a seemingly impossible situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Hornak, do you have another?
Let's see if Amy Madoskin is on.
Okay, Amy, if you're not there, this is one last call. If anybody didn't sign up and would like
This
to.
is Sally.
I see her.
Yeah, I
Amy-
couldn't make the computer work for me to sign up, so I apologize, but I would like to read something.
Okay, hang on just a second. I think Amy is there. I see her picture there in the corner, so.
I'm
Oh,
here.
good.
Can you hear?
Oh,
I could hear you for a second.
I'm sorry, I'm not showing myself, but if you can hear me, I'd like to go ahead and address the board if possible.
Yes, you can. Please keep in mind that there is a 5-minute limitation.
Okay, I will. Being a TK teacher in the district, I'm wondering what specific plan might be included for TK and kindergarten students that is developmentally and socially appropriate in terms of these 5 big areas. In my mind, I'm kind of wondering about everyday classroom logistics concerning health and safety, like classroom table situations, center times, emergency drills. If the kids are supposed to be 6 feet apart, as a classroom teacher, I'm just kind of wondering how logistically that will look. The second concern and question I have is curriculum changes in terms of the TK curriculum with social play and interactions. Again, if they're 6 feet apart, I'm curious as to what maybe other districts are looking at, what that might be or what would be recommended. Number 3, some of the special things that the lower L classrooms have, like the resting mats, cleaning of the mats and materials in all the classrooms and what that would look like. And the last 2 areas of concerns I have just basically is being around 5-year-olds, 4 and 5-year-olds, what would be the age appropriate mask wearing ideas? And then the idea of having extra hands all on board to help with these things because they're so little. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Sally, I guess this is your time. 5 minutes?
okay. Okay, great. Just a minute. All right. Lost my page. All right, I'm gonna try and shrink you guys. There we go. Okay, I'm not strong in math. I'm not a strong math person, but I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for 46 years. So my feeling is more the medical part of it. If a teacher tests positive for COVID, are they required to be quarantined for 2 to 3 weeks? Is their sick leave covering this, and then will they be paid? If that teacher has 5 classes with 30 students in it, do all 150 students then have to stay home and be quarantined after they've been tested? Do all 150 of those students get tested? Who pays for the testing? Then what happens at the school? How are the parents notified? Does everyone, each of those students' families then have to be tested? And who pays for that? What if someone lives in the same house as a teacher that tests positive? Does that teacher now have to quarantine with their family? Is it time off work? Is that paid? Where is the district going to find substitute teachers who work in a classroom that has been fully exposed, possibly infecting more students and that substitute teacher? What if they are diagnosed with COVID-19, that substitute? Are all the kids then in that classroom then quarantined after being tested? And who's paying for that? What if the student in the classroom tests positive? What if the other kids in that household test positive? Are they then quarantined? Have they talked about this? What is the stress going to be on our teachers? I love that we just had 2 teachers talking. That is just fabulous, because they're the ones that are like the frontline people once the school starts. How does this affect their health and their well-being? How does it affect their ability to teach? How does it affect the quality of the education that is being provided? What is going to be going on with our kids? What is the long-term effect of consistently being stressed out? How is it affecting students and the facilities where the first teacher in the classroom dies of this, which would be the horriblest part of this whole thing. The first parent of a student who has brought it home, the first kid to die. How are we going to cope with that? How many more people are going to die that otherwise would not have had this if we just stay home longer? Now, I know I've done some research. Grade school kids rarely get this. It's the teachers. It's the 20, 30, 40 somethings and even us 60 somethings that get it. It's more of an adult disease. But they just had a 25-year-old kid. They were on the news tonight talking about a 25-year-old kid. And to me, that's a kid that had gone to a bar and took off their mask in the bar. Well, they got it. That's where they figure they got it. So there you go. I mean, it's putting our teachers in danger. It's putting our workforce in danger, our janitors, our health, there's food service people in danger. How is this going to be handled? Thank you very much. I do love Holt Schools, and I appreciate all that you're doing. It's got to be a hard decision for you folks to do. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any additional comments from the public? Okay, we will close public comment and move to the approval of the board minutes. Board members, you have 4 different sets of board meetings in front of you, and I will entertain a motion to approve those board minutes.
You want to take them as one, President Perry, or or all together? One at a time. One at a time, Christine? Okay, Christine's nodding one at a time. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of June 8th.
I will second.
I have a first and a second. Ms. Dalton, can we have a roll call?
Actually, if I could just make a quick addition to that first. In the section entitled Food Service, it says that the presentation is on file in the superintendent's office, but you may recall that the presentation incorrectly stated that a la carte milk purchases could not be made if an account balance was 0 or below 0. So I want to make sure that that's documented somewhere. So if we could add to that portion of the minutes, with the exception of a la carte milk, which may in fact be purchased if an account has less than or equal to $0 balance.
Ms. Lopez, can we make that change? You're on mute.
Yes, I documented it as she was speaking, so I will make that change in the official minutes.
Thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Why don't we have that be Amy's motion then, because she detailed it out, and I'll support Amy's motion.
All right. With that, I have a first and a second. So Ms. Dalton, can we have a roll call?
Treasurer Bakken. Vice President Colligan.
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren.
Yes.
Trustee Robel.
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have the special meeting of June 23rd.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of the special meeting of June 23rd.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Dalton, can we have a roll call?
Treasurer Bakken.
Yes.
Vice President Colligan.
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren.
Yes.
Trustee Robel.
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes. Next, the board minutes for July 6th.
I'll make a motion to accept the special meeting minutes of July 6th.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Dalton, can we have a roll call?
Treasurer Bakken.
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgen,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then lastly, the minutes of July 9th.
I will make a motion to accept the special meeting minutes of July 9th as presented.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Dalton, roll call.
Treasurer Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Board members, you have a listing of the disbursements in your board packet, both in check and credit card.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Ms. Dalton, can we have a roll call?
Sure. Treasurer Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Of gifts, we have a pay it forward donations of $1,675 to the lunch accounts. Dr. Hornak, I would imagine that comes from a number of individuals, but maybe not.
Yes, that's a variety of stakeholders have donated to the, I'm not sure, it's falling under the pay it forward, but it's really for the mobile food bus to pay for additional supplies to make sure we're paying for food for the rest of the family.
Okay. And this is since the last board meeting, 1675?
Correct.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I would entertain a motion that we accept these gifts.
Make a motion to accept the generous gifts.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Dalton, roll call.
Treasurer Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we'll look for the approval of the final discipline for student A. I'll hand this off to you, Ms. Robo.
Thank you, Mr. President. The final decision for student A was, is they will return to school in the fall, and the decision was unanimous by the committee. That's all I have.
I will make a motion to accept the recommendation of the committee as described.
Second.
Support.
First and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Dalton, a roll call.
Treasurer Bakken,
Ben,
Treasurer Bakken,
Yes, I'm sorry.
all right. Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Under reports, Ms. Culligan, did you guys have a ISOA?
Nope, we will not have one again till the fall, so I think it'll be September.
All right, that gets you off the first one, but you got the second one now.
Yes, so as you all know, thank you for your participation into the graduation. Just from being out in the community, it's really well received, and I think we might have changes moving forward with, we had a little bit pushback before then, but I just think they really enjoyed that. we did not have a follow-up meeting afterwards. I don't know if Christine has anything to add from the committee. I will just, give a shout out to the team that was there the day, Mike and Jeepers. I can't think of his name. How could I forget his name?
Jeff.
Jeff, thank you. My gosh. Sorry, Jeff. Had a brain fart, but it was a great committee. I cannot believe how well organized it was, down to dinner for us, and just the organization was top notch.
I'd also like to add that Michelle Hoffman, who is a community member, she spent the entire week, every single day at the high school working on the grounds, weeding, doing mulch. And so she went above and beyond what we would ever expect a community member to do to help us prepare. So I did want to also recognize her and like Trustee Colligan said, Jeff Miller and a lot of other folks, but it was beautiful. And we've also in the superintendent's office had nothing but positive feedback by everyone. No negative feedback at all.
Yeah, I agree.
It was a pleasure to participate.
Great.
I thought it was exceptionally well organized and run. I was a little concerned going into it, but I think it well exceeded my expectations.
I agree. And Laura, I know you and Christine spent a lot of time on that and others as well. And not to keep repeating the same thing, but Jeff Miller was just a champ. I was there the first day and he was flying around and got people moving and organized. And I mean, again, everyone was hustling, but Jeff in particular really knocked the cover off the ball. And I thought it was great for all the kids. And I think there's some things to take away from it long term that were just really efficient. I think of like some of the grandparents and so forth that might not be so mobile, and knowing when to be there wasn't, there were just some positives all the way around. So
thank you. That's all.
Sorry, I was muted and didn't know it. Next, can Ms. Dalton, you speak on the Holt Equity Access Team, or otherwise known as HEAT?
Sure. I've asked to join us this evening Mr. Dominic Knighton. Mr. Knighton is a third grade teacher at Wilcox Elementary. He's also a member of the Holt Equity and Access Team. And I've invited him to join us this evening just to give us an update on what's been going on in the past month for the HEAT team. Mr. Knighton?
Hey guys, how's it going? Good evening. As Mrs. Dalton shared, my name is Dominic Knighton. I teach third grade at Wilcox. And for those of you that are new to HEAT, it stands for Holt Equity Access Team. And I would be remiss to not give credit to the marvelous teachers who have been a part of HEAT far before me. This summer, after 8 years of teaching, I learned about HEAT. The same summer where the tragic death of Black lives had made national news. The resurgence in HEAT is the byproduct of heinous violence towards Blacks and the underrepresentation of Black and brown faces in positions of power. I do want to share with you guys real quick an article that I pulled earlier that I shared with Mrs. Dalton. It's titled How George Floyd's Death Gave Rise to Change in a Largely White Utah School District. And I'm going to just quote something that the gentleman shared. So when I walk into a room, I'm instantly looking for people who look like me. I'm trying to find the first person that I can sit next to or that I can relate to and I can at least give a head nod to so they understand what I'm going through. But man, I'm looking around, and the only person there is me, Barbara said. Now, Barbara is a fifth grade teacher in this particular school district. And what I found interesting was the sentiments that he was sharing are the same sentiments that brought me to HEAT. So the HEAT team is in place to support the district's vision statement to innovate, educate, and inspire by creating equitable pathways for all students, challenging and changing existing systems that are barriers to our potential, and being agents of change who will seek, recognize, and seize opportunities to honor voices, surface issues, and promote equity. And the last, take action to make change. Mr. Bakken was big about making sure that HEAT is a group that is about action, as opposed to just talking. We're actually on the ground trying to make things happen. So within HEAT, or I guess you could look at HEAT as being a group that applies a critical lens of analysis towards cultural and racial biases. We're looking at our systems in our district, curriculum, hiring process, and part of our job is to bring attention and then to work on making these changes. So within HEAT, there's subgroups, there's 5 projects, system analysis, student support, community outreach, parent support, and staff support. And then within each group, there are subgroups with different projects. The project coordinators. I'm one of them. We're meeting, the groups that I'm overseeing, we're meeting once or twice a week. The project group that I'm chairing, which is co-chaired by Leah Porter, is working on student projects on organization groups, where student empowerment and advocacy is promoted through clubs such as Diversity Club and Student Council. We also have analysis of student handbook and code of conduct, which Mrs. Dalton is a part of as well. And then we have mentor programs, which several teachers in the district are pushing to have increased frequency and visibility. We have mentor programs currently, but they lack, for lack of a better word, they lack the engagement, they lack the intensity that we're looking for to really develop this to be something solid that Holt Public Schools can have. I know part of the hope is that if we can begin to build some solid mentoring programs, we can promote the hiring or promote teaching to our students in the hopes of maybe them going on to college, becoming teachers themselves, and ultimately coming back to Holt Public Schools. The thing that's unique about the mentoring program or the work that we're starting to do right now is it's really difficult to get the groundwork going to get the culture of mentoring really brought to our schools. We're struggling right now with gaining representation across the district at different buildings. So the hopes right now is that we just start small. We partner up with a couple of classrooms that we know they're on board. We're looking at current systems that are already in place. Just starting small, hoping to gain traction, and then bringing other teachers in if they're interested. I do want to share with you guys a quick set of numbers. Alona Troitsky, who's a junior high teacher, she shared that between 60 to 70% of U.S. students become chronically disengaged from school during 7th or 8th grade, and that 68% of students who drop out of school do so in 9th grade or after repeating 9th grade. So the hope of the mentor program is to eliminate and again, just to create a culture of where kids understand how to navigate school. We're providing them with social skills, academic skills, things that are going to promote them in order to be successful. One thing I want to close on in talking about HEAT is that the groups, I look at what Mr. Bakken wants to do as far as making sure that we're recruiting and that we're retaining Black educators. And part of what we're talking about in our groups is the lack of, if I'm just being quite honest, there are Black educators that have not stayed in our district. There's a Black educator that his contract was not renewed this school year. So there is talk amongst each others where we're a little bit disappointed and upset with the lack of retaining this particular individual. But while we're doing all this work, we're letting Black people go. And that is an issue that I firmly believe needs to be addressed. And again, there's teachers in the district that are involved with making sure that our systems are being analyzed. I know in referencing that article that I shared with you guys earlier, that particular teacher brought to the attention of the school board the same thing that HEAT is bringing to the attention of this school board. And with that, they were able to create 3 positions in that district for ethnic and cultural diversity specialists. So I know there's particular people on or in HEAT that are pushing for the same thing. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you. Ms. Dalton, did you have any more to HEAT?
No, I think that's it. And I would like each month to maybe have a different HEAT member come and present, because it is such a diverse group with really wonderful participants. So we've made extraordinary progress, and I'm just delighted to share it with the board.
Okay. Don't go anywhere because your policy is next. You're sitting in for Ms. Bureau.
Yes, indeed. So I spoke with Mrs. Bureau. There are a few things that we're working on in policy regarding the presentation of board docs on the website that has not quite been implemented yet. And so once that's done, then we'll notify you at the next board meeting. Of course, board docs is accessible to the public on the website. But there will be some adjustments made so that more information can be seen about our progress as we make changes to that document. That's the only thing going on in policy for me to report this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the 2021 bond initiative, and we will move this conversation to the new agenda business, which is a carried forward from the committee of the whole. And our goal here is to, make some decisions this evening in regards to our team partners for this bond initiative. So the superintendent's report, I'll turn that over to you, Dr. Wernick.
Thank you, President Perry. Before we go too far, I would like the board to know, as well as our public, that over the 4th of July holiday, we lost a 2019 graduate. Corbin Ferris drowned while swimming with his family. And I would just like to pause for a moment and request that everyone think about Corbin's family at this time. Thank you. As you know, much of the work that I do is uniquely coupled with the curriculum office. Although they're the heavy lifters, I'm generally leading from alongside or sometimes from behind. I will attempt to avoid duplicating Jessica's report tonight. Steve is on vacation with his family this particular week, so we will not be hearing from him. To that end, I am thrilled to announce that we have a new HR director since the last time we were together for a regular meeting. We are welcoming Dr. Erin Quinlan. She's a familiar face to the Board of Education as well as internal members of Holt Public, and she is our new Human Resources Director overseeing talent management. To that end, Mr. Trezise will continue to stay with us, and there's going to be that seamless handoff over the course of the next 4 or 5 months. You've read my report. A couple of things I'd like to highlight that missed the report. We have started our community task force. So we have a task force of approximately 50 to 60 members of our public who have been meeting. We met last week, we meet again on Wednesday, and they're going to be helping us with our return to learn plan, potentially helping us with things like our new bond initiative at some point and prioritizing, and then in the event that we need to go through budget cuts, helping us prioritize budget cuts and really understanding first, second, and third consequences to the proposed budget cuts. The first meeting, we were just learning a little bit more about Holt Public and what it means to become a key communicator. And then moving forward, we'll be expanding out to those additional topics. We continue to collect exit survey information from our staff in addition to our students. Although our student response is a little better than our staff exit surveys, at some point I would love to either meet with the subgroup of the board or further discuss how we can, work to learn more from our employees that are leaving us and determine what's working and what's not. I did hear of a unique idea about a stay interview, and I full credit goes to the board president. He talked about the fact that from time to time it's important to engage with employees to find out, what's working and what would retain them. So I think that's a pretty clever idea. In terms of communications, we have broadened our communication. You are seeing a much wider footprint with Holt Public Schools. We are promoting things on almost a daily basis regarding our programming. In addition to, we have a 10 video series we've contracted with one of our former graduates. In fact, one of our last videos highlighted the HEAT program and programming, and we'll be doing a follow-up to that HEAT programming when I can secure the videographer and a few stars. So more on that coming soon. I would just love to give special recognition to our employees that have gone above and beyond and making a difference during this unprecedented time. Graduation was extremely well planned, and what I kept hearing, I was the final person that the public saw that was related to Holt Public Schools. They kept saying they would never have an opportunity to be in the front row at the Breslin Center. They would never have an opportunity to hear their students' name called within 2 minutes. So those were huge, huge wins. And as Trustee Colligan mentioned, I wonder just a little bit about, how do we bring the large group together for, the group presentations, and how do we then pivot to allow our families to be that close? And I think there's probably a new idea in the making. Again, we continue to hear good things from our parents, guardians, students, and members of the public. The other big thing is, as you know, Ingham County is, in our whole region is, we've seen an uptick in the COVID cases, and my worry about continuing to delay, it continues to kind of push back the students' opportunity to transition to their next phase of their life. So I really appreciate all the hard work that went into that, a great deal. You've read the report. I guess one other thing I'd like to highlight is Wednesday, we're hosting coronavirus testing at Holt High School from 10 to 2. There is drive up if you want to stay in your car. That is free, or you have walk up, and that is being sponsored by the Ingham County Health Department. Again, 10 to 2, free COVID testing at Holt High on Wednesday, July 15th.
That's Wednesday. Okay, I thought it was Tuesday, but it is Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
And again, you said that was free, right?
It is free. It is free. Yep. Yep. Results come in a few days. I've been tested by this same unit, and I bet the results came in 4 to 5 days. And it is the swab test, just for full transparency. If I just turned into an emoji, it's
got it.
Grit your teeth emoji. Well worth it, because there's peace of mind for that moment in time. But yeah.
All right, I have just a couple items for you. I wanted to touch on graduation, but you all did such an excellent job on that. I won't repeat it, but again, a lot of hard work by a lot of people. And I think in the background, there were people that were working on really trying to make sure that every comment that was made, every concern that was made, was turned into something that in the end turned out the way that it did. And again, thanks to all for all your hard work on that. Board members, we usually in the fall in August have a meeting together with admin. It's an all-day meeting. Due to COVID, we won't have that this year. We are trying to work on something that gets us together, maybe in a smaller group, but face-to-face. Not for a full day, but Trustee Colleran had a great idea about, spending some time, maybe one-on-one with Dr. Hornak. So stay tuned for that. And then as far as opening in the fall, and we'll hear from curriculum in a little bit about that, in the same respect as what we went through with graduation, this reopening, there's a lot of considerations. There's a lot of issues that are going on. And, one of the visions that we have as far as our board and our goals is the flexibility. And I think you're seeing that with the survey that Dr. Hornak sent out. We want to hear from you as parents and the public of what, your expectations are, what you want to see. And thanks for those people who got on public comment and shared their comments as well. I think this flexible system that we're trying to build is proof of, where we at today and where we're going tomorrow. So with that, Jessica, I think you're going solo without Steve today.
I am. How did he get out of? No, I'm just kidding. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. Before I get into the work, just listening to the processing that, during public comment that people are doing and reflecting on just where we are as a district right now. I'm in a book club with a group of teachers around what motivates children to do complex work, particularly children who maybe have endured trauma or hard life experiences. And some of the book is about brain science. I won't give you a brain science lecture, but it highlights that there are 4 things that create extreme stress in humans. And they are novelty, unpredictability, a loss of a sense of control, and a threat to the ego. And I continue to reflect on how this pandemic experience continues to put us in all 4 categories. We don't have a lot of experience dealing with this. We are desperate to gather as much information as possible and respond to the needs of our people, and stress levels are high. And I just want to preface this with the disposition from central office has been very much a flexible, adaptive approach because we care about our employees and we care about our students and parents. And I no longer go on Facebook for like enjoyment. I go on Facebook for research. I'm friends with 200 teachers. I read lots of posts. I actually had read what Marcy had shared earlier. I take notes when I'm in Facebook. Like, how weird is that, right? So I just want to go into this with that perspective that while we certainly don't have things figured out, and it feels a lot like we're living one day at a time, that I really think collaboratively and talking and being transparent about what we're doing and how we're feeling, like we're gonna get through it. Like that's kind of my one day at a time perspective on that, as stressful as it is. So I'm gonna share my screen. I'm hoping that has been made available to me. Looks like it has. All right, can everybody see that? Great. So not a super long presentation, but I just kind of wanted to share with you like the snapshot in time of where we are. So when we met last time in June, either we weren't quite out of school or we were just about out of school. Since then, we have surveyed our staff and we've surveyed the community. The surveys kind of had 2 pieces. It was a reflection on how the spring went, as well as some thinking about fall. We got thousands of responses that we've read through carefully. We learned a lot this spring. The tough thing is we learned so much that going into the fall, we have to choose what we focus on. I think our goal has been to simplify the learning for both students and staff so as not to overwhelm anyone moving forward. But we, alongside that, have a growing awareness of the inequities within our system during a typical traditional school year that are exacerbated by a remote environment. So we are living under the assumption that we will have to shift to remote learning at some point in the future. And kind of one of those like hope for the best, plan for the worst type situations. So while we are having these conversations, we've tried to narrow the focus of the curriculum office. And remember, we're just one piece of the pie, but the curriculum office into these 5 bullets, the bigger bullets. And if there's a star next to it, it means I'm going to get into it a little deeper in a second. But these 5 buckets came out of distilling all the feedback we got from parents and administrators and teachers to try to determine what people wanted to prioritize around their learning going forward. So the first one being learning gaps. I did have a teacher share with me this morning something I had read also a little while ago about reframing learning gaps so as not to make assumptions around which students have learning gaps, but to recognize that our system creates the learning gaps, not the children, and treat the learning gaps for what they are. They're a systematized process that sorts children. And so we want to address not just the concept of learning gaps, but also that idea of catch-up growth, which we have some research and thinking about models that allow for catch-up growth that still give students access to their current grade level learning. So there's a lot that goes into thinking about that. In addition, we're going to need to talk to staff about what targets have we not covered with the children, just the logistics of what we did last spring, and how do we integrate the learning loss into new experiences and not spend the first 2 months replicating what would have happened. So that gets into learning targets, and I will have another slide on learning targets. More and more research I read and the more and more teachers I talk to, the clarity of targets has been critical. Anytime you have a closure or anytime we're collaborating, the target itself, it seems simple, right? Like my learning target. Analyze the causes of World War I. That seems simple. But once we talk about it as a teacher team, it's not just the target, but it's the consensus around what's it look like for a student to achieve the target, as well as consensus around, are there too many? I mean, sometimes we talk about, goodness, we're trying to cover a lot of material. So consensus around proficiency, around targets, and try to create equity around outcomes in our classroom. Feedback was another big one that came up through remote learning. I think teachers are interested in, students are interested in talking about what does feedback look like, both in the classroom, doing that well in the classroom, verbally and in writing, but also remotely. How do you give feedback on learning in that way? Which leads, they kind of, all these bullets lead together. Instructional technology leads us into what tools can we best provide to our teachers and students. There's a huge learning curve with instructional technology. We want to try to keep that simple as well and do a few things really well instead of a lot of things, just trying to figure them out. So we are at this point gathering what little research there is out there about best practice with instruction, with instructional technology. We've spent 4 years talking about what's it look like to, for example, provide good questioning techniques in the classroom. It's a part of the teacher evaluation. It's a complex process. So now the conversation, well, how do we do that remotely? We've spent all this time figuring out how to do that in a classroom. So trying to shift some of that conversation around best practice to instructional technology, knowing that online is not the same. Like, we're not gonna be able to replicate that experience. And then finally, the fifth bullet, which I really could have, if I was fancier, would have made that like an umbrella bullet that all the other bullets fall under, is the idea of cultural competence. I think I shared with you that last year we started a text called Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. It digs into a lot of the ideas around implicit bias and academic rigor in the classroom and an equitable classroom. We got about 3-4 chapters into that with administrators. That's the group reading it before the closure happened. So that whole umbrella of cultural competence addressed a lot in our thinking with the equity and access team that I'm a member of as well. Ensuring that our practices are sensitive to the diverse needs of learners. And that's a big thing to keep in mind. It's every lesson we plan, every routine we design, every tool we adopt. We need to use that lens. That's kind of why I would have made it the umbrella lens. So those are, at this point, what Steve and I have been talking about for our 5 big buckets for the coming school year. Can't guarantee that won't change, but we felt like those were the essential areas of learning for our staff and community based on the feedback we got from the spring. Now the learning, I'm gonna go into a couple of them a little more in depth. In this learning targets, I do have down here at the bottom, I shared it with you a couple weeks ago, that I'm requesting a vote. And it's more a vote of confidence, I guess. It isn't a technical adoption of anything new. But learning targets, the way that Steve and I have been working with staff on them, is a support for standards-based instruction. And what we've spent a lot of time on over the last couple years is ensuring we aren't teaching just the kite runner, but we are teaching these English targets using kite runner. So it's kind of a shift in language, and one of the reasons we find having a standards-based instruction so important right now is when we go remote, we know a lot of the importance of going remote is student choice and flexibility. We don't want to be tied to just one particular thing. So if we have clarity on our instruction around standards, it makes the resources a little more flexible. So I shared with you guys a screencast. It was 15 minutes of me talking. I don't blame you one bit if you didn't watch it, but I would like my views to go up. So if you want to just put that on and do the dishes, that's great. But I had a screencast I made for staff around this idea of clarity using learning targets and how powerful it is for kids when the teacher has that clarity and the flexibility and autonomy to maneuver the resources to get there. But we know going into the fall that we're going to need our teacher teams to examine every unit of instruction, identify which targets are the priority targets and which ones are supplemental, because when we go remote, we will not be able to teach every single target the way we do live. So it's important we have this. It also aligns with the Marzano instructional model that was adopted in 2016. We have a standards-based model. So do you have any questions around the concept of learning targets or why it is one of the 5 big buckets for the fall?
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for
Hi, Laura.
doing this ahead of time. My question is, any type of change right now, I think I'm really critical of it because of all the stress. So would this be a year you're working towards it for this next year and not putting changes on teachers moving forward for this year? I just know the stress level of all of our employees. We had 2 teachers that spoke at the beginning of this meeting. And so moving forward, I can see that work, but postponing a little bit and not putting it on for the fall is where I'm asking.
Sure, and that is a really fair question. So we have been shifting to standards-based instruction, honestly, for 4 years. So this isn't new for any teachers. I do hear some hesitancy sometimes from teachers. For example, like with the Go Math curriculum, if they say, I'm teaching chapter 3, we are just shifting the language from we're teaching chapter 3 to we're teaching 2-digit multiplication. So, and we've been doing that with them for a long time. That's the work that we've been doing with teacher leader teams and our instructional coaches for the last 4 years. So I absolutely would not put anything new on teachers right now. I agree with you on that one. So I don't think this would be new to anyone. K-6, the report cards have been standards-based for a long time anyway. So it's just an official nod to the work that they've been doing in an acknowledgement that we need a little more flexibility.
So the research-based curriculums that we have, such as Reading Street and Go Math, as you mentioned,
yep.
Explain to me how the research is still going to be used for those programs if we're switching to standards-based.
Sure. So that's a great question. This year, 4th grade Reading Street, that's where most of my experience with this is. K-6 is not most of my focus, so I'm sure Steve could talk to this a little
true.
bit more.
Yeah, sorry.
Where's
Steve?
Fortunately, my husband teaches 4th grade, so I get a little bit of insight into what they're doing. And I feel like it's been reinvigorating for them to watch the 4th grade team. What they've done is they've taken those 6 units and they still teach them in order. They still use the Reading Street materials, but they look at how the curriculum itself came with kind of a calendar of standards, like which standards are covered in each unit and which standards are mastered in each unit. And they just did an analysis of where in this unit do we see mastery on which standards? And can we reduce the number of standards we're seeing mastery on in each unit instead of jumping around from standard to standard to standard? So same curriculum, same experience, but a different set of clarity for teachers on what really are my targets for this unit, instead of just teaching it, without necessarily thinking about those targets, having an awareness of what those targets look like.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jessica, I just have a quick question for you. So when you say that you want board support to adopt standards-based instruction, I get that you're saying that report cards are already reflecting that K-6. Are you talking about a change for report cards this coming year for higher levels?
No, and that's why I've been careful to say standards-based instruction instead of standards-based report cards or assessment. So as a secondary teacher, what I would want to be able to talk about with them is for this particular lab in science, what are the learning outcomes we'd expect? And I would anticipate all the teachers in that biology group would be able to identify the specific learning and what it looks like when kids get there. Now, if they give them a 10 out of 10 on it or give them a 3 on the scale, they still have autonomy over that.
Okay, thank you.
Jessica, along those lines, providing feedback to students, and I can't remember the name of it, but the alternative to giving grades of A, B, C, and D, are we still using that?
So K-6, there's potentially some changes coming to this, but I don't want to light any fires. But shifting to Power School, there is a standards-based progress report that elementary teachers could access that may be significantly easier than filling out report cards. But for now, K-6 has a report card model that is a 1 through 4 scale, 3 is proficient, and they've had that. This is their I don't know, probably 20th year of that kind of report card, 4th year of having a 1 through 4 model. 7-12 still has letter grades as we always have. That won't change.
And then we've got the flip side where I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to be synchronous. I don't know, you know, so that's interesting too.
Yes. All right. So I don't know, President Perry, do you want me to hold off to the end for requesting votes on item? Uh-oh.
The other thing is, Mark, I mentioned this, and Patty, you were a reader this year too, right? Georgia, the state of Georgia is doing one of these PLCs for AP, and I asked them to share their agenda with me, and they were going to share from the read. Did you guys get anything, or?
I'm not sure who's
Yeah, who is that? I'm sorry.
speaking.
I think it's Heather. I recognize her voice.
Even just a little bit like that. By then, we're going to have our scores too, so that's another thing. Nobody wants to dwell on their scores, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if it came up.
David, are you a co-facilitator? Nope.
I am not, but I just sent him an email. Yep, he's got it covered.
All right. Whew. I mean, I don't mind a co-presenter, but that was a little awkward. So President Perry, do you want to hold off on votes until the end of presentation, or do you want to kind of do them as we go?
Oh, you need more than one vote?
I have this one and then the instructional technology one. I have two golden request vote lines.
Well, let's stop and do this now then, if it's on this section of your report. So again, help us out. What specifically are you looking for?
A motion to support and adopt standards-based instruction.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to support and adopt the standards-based instruction as explained by Jessica here.
I support.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? And I'm taking it, Jessica, you're going to take in Vice President Culligan's suggestion there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think I might be saying the same thing, but I just want to make sure we're not adding burden to anyone in this kind of situation. It's hard enough on everybody, including the students and the teachers. So.
But I do feel like, Jessica, even if it doesn't feel like that to you, I feel like with the staff. So I support standards-based, but this fall or doing it this year is where, and I know that they're working towards that, but if we have to go online and they're doing all of that work,
oh, yes.
I'm just really concerned about that. And so I'm looking for this mental safety of our employees. So anything new, I'm very cautious because I've had lots of conversations with current employees and just the two that were on here before, which I'd said, I'm just real nervous of moving forward with something like this where it is a change. Because if they have to teach their core curriculum in the way that they're doing it, I just feel more comfortable with that than asking them to look at standards and do some other things. Just putting that out there.
Totally agree with you, and I can ensure this has been ongoing work for years, and it will be ongoing for years. Like, I don't think we'll ever be to a place where we can say we're 100% calibrated on 100% of targets, and it's a journey of exploring what are the targets, what's it look like to achieve them, and honestly, in 2007, Marty Schnepp, Rick Couturier, and I rolled out backwards design at the high school, and we were doing this work at that point. I think really what I'm looking for is just acknowledgement and support from the board for the work we have been doing, so that when I'm working with teachers and they're saying, gosh, you know, are we focusing on the standards or are we focusing on this, you know, story? And I can say for sure the standards.
Can I suggest we maybe reword the motion a little bit to support your continuing to move towards a standards-based approach? Maybe make it that kind of language, that we're in support of standards, but maybe not implying that we're implementing it full hog this semester.
It's going to be a work in progress. I respect that.
So I'm a little more comfortable saying, yeah, I think it's a great idea to move towards standards, but I don't think we're going to get there this semester or even this year.
Maybe in my career.
Or yes, maybe, yeah.
Slow work, which is fine. It's, you know, it's a lot of deep thinking.
Jessica, may I ask one more question? So my understanding is it's not going to change report cards for next year. Will it change teacher evaluations in any way for the 2021 school year?
No, and in fact, standards-based instruction has been in their evaluation since 2016. So in a way, we kind of already adopted this. I just feel like this is a part of that teacher evaluation that is so important that I wanted you all to be really aware of it, and I wanted a lot of acknowledgement around the work that's gone into all the thinking and making the shift.
Well, I still feel like we've adopted core programs, and that's where I feel like there's still a conflict. So I guess I'm really confused a little bit. I know we've been working on learning targets, and within our core programs, there are targets of standards in each unit that are supposed to be mastered, like you said. So there's a little bit of conflict here still for me. So
let me show you an example. And gosh, this is a giant thing that may not make a ton of sense to everybody. So I want to just show you the work that teachers have done. So that's the thing that I feel like I'm honoring here is this isn't Jessica Cotter's work. Our teacher teams, like our 4th grade team, this is what they worked on all year. And our 7th grade English teachers, what they worked on all year. So for example, and to make this live for you, what we've done is we've talked about the target, the district target that a student in 7th grade should formulate a claim. This is an English target that's appropriate given the prompt and shows it the understanding of a given text or evidence. And what we've done is we've taken the Common Core standard and we've given examples of what it looks like for a 7th grader to be proficient. So one of the things I hear from the community sometimes is they long for consistency. My 4th grader has the same experience as another, or my student in geometry has the same experience as another student in geometry. And one of the benefits of this work is we come together as a teacher group and discuss what does it look like for a 7th grader to show us a claim that is appropriate given a prompt. So when I say it's a journey, it really is a journey. It's identifying the targets. And so Laura, it absolutely is which targets in which reading street unit. And then it's discussing when I pick up formative assessments from kids throughout that unit, what would it look like for them to be proficient? Like how am I giving them feedback along the way? It really ties into that feedback target. Because it's hard for me to give feedback as a teacher if I'm not super, super clear on what proficiency looks like. And one of our goals around the equity work, so we have a curriculum review group that is doing an analysis of our district curriculum around through the lens of diversity, is ensuring we provide instructional models and supports that indicate all students will be proficient on all targets. That's what our goal is. And if they're not, what do they need to get there? This standards-based model allows us to really focus on what are the specific building blocks of skills kids need to get to that level of proficiency that we all agree on. So it's, in a way, I kind of see it as, I know it's a stretch, but it's my passion that this type of work leads to more equity in the classroom. It creates a more equitable experience for all students. So it's not a subjective decision by Jessica Cotter if this paper is an A paper. It's based on a collaborative understanding of what proficiency for sophomores look like. So I promise you that this work is not new. I don't know what else to do other than to tell you, I promise we've been working on this for years. I have documents like this, K-12 for social studies, science, math, and English that I can share with you. In that we are honoring the scope and the process, and we're still using all our adopted curriculum and assessments. So K4, K5, still, like, nothing has changed with the unit assessments. Oh, I missed one there. So I am requesting that you support the continued work more as a nod to all the work from teachers and just an acknowledgement of that we do have a standards-based evaluation tool. Honestly, it would be really hard to not move in this direction with the evaluation tool. Like that's the foundation of it. So I am requesting that just an acknowledgement of the supporting the continued work.
All right, I have a first and a second. Ms. Dalton, a roll call.
President Perry,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
Trustee Hallgren,
He's muted.
Sorry,
sorry,
too many screens. The mouse was in the wrong spot. Yes.
thank you. Dalton, yes. Vice President Colligan,
No.
Treasurer Bakken,
Yes.
All right, thank you. I did turn my space heater off. You guys made me sweat on that one. All right, moving into instructional technology. So this one is not a new thing for us. You guys, I think, are aware we have an instructional technology teacher leader that the district has positions for in every building. We have been shifting over the last 5 years from our instructional tech leaders doing like fixing speakers and making sure the technology works to the instructional technology piece of integrating tools into the classroom. For this category, one thing that we heard last spring from families is it's really helpful to narrow the number of platforms that families have to interact with. So I think some of you may have students, I have 3 kids. Sometimes they, during our typical school year, are in multiple platforms. So one might be in Seesaw, one might use the Remind Me app, one teacher might use Google, and so we wanted to streamline down to ask for support on the adoption of Google Classroom for the 2021 school year. That really is an outcome of this past spring. The ISD supported a lot of the Google Classroom work through webinars and Zoom meetings. We also have Andrew Shaver that has worked in our district through the ISD who supports with that. So the longer term vision of this is to explore multiple learning management systems. So that's why the vote is just for the 2021 school year. There are a lot of learning management systems. Power School that we're moving to like right now actually integrates with a platform called Schoology. I don't know if you guys have heard of Schoology. And we got a quote from them, and it is a cost, not cheap. But what we were thinking is for this coming year, 2021, same as how Laura had said earlier and Rob had agreed, we don't want to put new things on teachers. Google Classroom is where we invested a lot of learning and energy last spring. So for ease of transition, the plan is to continue with Google Classroom in the fall with the intention of pulling a committee together to do an analysis of Google Classroom, Schoology. There's several platforms that we could look at, do a cost analysis and look at how well they integrate with Power School, just to get the best product as we can. But that's gonna take some time. So for now, looking at continuing with Google Classroom.
So Jessica, technical questions. I know MSU has a site license with Google to use that platform. Does Holt have a special arrangement, or are we just going in under the general open public plan into Google Classroom?
No, we have, you are correct, similar to MSU, we have an organizational suite license, which basically means our students, it talks to Active Directory, so our students and teachers are connected to Classroom already. It also means that we have an extra layer of security that those that don't have hpsk12.net email addresses can't get into a Google Classroom.
Right. So in order for students to log in or teachers to log in, they're going to need our domain name to log in.
They have to use it's connected to their email and their normal school credentials. So
all right.
students have theirs too.
Okay. Just checking, because there is an extra layer of security when you have that arrangement. So I'm glad you guys have figured that out.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about this one a little bit because this was my biggest challenge from a parenting standpoint, with kids in 3rd grade and 1st grade, and there was Google Classroom, which connected to Meet, but early on that struggled, and Flipgrid and Remind and Blooms, and some were PowerPoint. And I understand it's going to take some time to, evaluate these and make the best decisions, but to me, that's what now is for, in terms of, and I'm sure you've got some people together evaluating these now. How are we going to limit the number of logins is kind of one question I have, because that was really, and I feel that I'm like on a 1 to 10 tech scale. I'm not Kevin, but I'm a solid 7, maybe 7.5. I'm not bad. And it was hard. I mean, and I just think of some of our families struggling with the tech side. That is just that then, I mean, I got it. There were times where I'm like, I can't do it. I'm just going to give up, for today. It was hard. And so, limiting logins is one thought. And then what critical things does Google Classroom not do where we have to use some other programs? For example, like Flipgrid, I thought was really great for being able to video record, my daughter's answer to a question so that the teacher could really see how she explained it. And it's fine if things connect in where you're just clicking a link and going, but it's hard when it's, 10 minutes before a meeting and you're trying to remember everything that you had to do. So talk a little bit about that, kind of limiting logins, and then what are Google Classroom's limitations where, teachers do have the latitude to use some other programs.
So one of the goals as far as logins is, you may remember when you get into Google Classroom, there's the waffle up at the top that you can click on to get all the different options in G Suite, all the different apps that you have. One of the things we've been working on is embedding within that waffle any of the required curriculums that students might need to access. So it would just be a click on that particular. We definitely want to ensure that anything, so assuming we go back face-to-face to some degree, I'm not sure what that would look like, but we are hopeful that we can launch the year with some clarity around platform, what its use is, and how to get into it. So a little bit of organization and front loading on our end of, for teachers, here's the Google Classroom code and how to get in. Within Google Classroom, here's the tab that shows the different platforms we use with the credential information. So trying to just make it easy to find. I know, same situation that you have. I have 3 kids in the district, and unfortunately 2 of them have the same teacher because they're twins. But it's a lot to learn. The kids actually seem to do better with it than I did in that way. But limiting logins, we should be able to do that by simplifying to that waffle. And doing some front loading with consistency around what platforms we're going to use in addition to that.
Okay, so like from a teacher perspective, in terms of surveying them, what are Google Classroom's big shortfalls? Like, what are the key things it doesn't do that you need something else for?
There's 2 that come to mind based on teacher feedback. One is it doesn't integrate with PowerSchool. So as a teacher providing feedback and grades through Google Classroom, I then have to double enter that into my gradebook. So it's inefficient in that way. For younger students, there has been a desire to use something like Seesaw or some other platforms that are a little friendlier for little kids to click around in. So Google Classroom does require, and I have 2nd graders, they were able to navigate it, but I imagine our kindergarten and 1st graders, sometimes it's not as intuitive for them to click around in Google Classroom. It would require some training on behalf of the teacher. Otherwise, one of the things that's listed here, and I'm a fan of Google, I feel like they're, as a company, they've been very responsive to the learning community. And what I mean by that is, how maybe you know this, but I'll go in and I will Google a question about Google. So how do I live stream through my Google Classroom? And they have a whole support community that does Q&A, and then they post the Q&A from the questions they're getting from the public. And what I noticed this spring is the questions being posed to Google were being posed by children. So they had full adult support answering questions coming in from children. So kids say things like, nothing's working, help me. So they're having to troubleshoot that. But what I've noticed is Google's responsive. They will pool that data and respond to the trouble they're seeing. So I've been paying close attention. I don't know if you guys noticed, but already Google Meet, which is their feature, like what we're doing right now, but within Google Classroom, Google Meet has had 2 or 3 upgrades. My hunch in the spring was it will look like Zoom by fall, because the feedback they're getting is, I want the grid view, I want to be able to mute everyone. So while I definitely know that there's shortcomings to Google, it's a free product. Of course, course, there's going to be, you know, some usability things that aren't as clean. They're so responsive to the public that they've been cleaning up a lot of the things that we ran into this spring.
Okay. And then as far as other options that are out there that other districts are considering for Google Classroom, like if we surveyed our teachers, let's say we go with Google Classroom, what would the number 2 or number 3 pick be in terms of other platforms that are as broad as Google Classroom?
That's a tough question because you have to pay for all the other ones. So I don't think our teachers, unless they've taught in another district, have a lot of experience with it. I was with a group of teachers where someone said, my niece is using Schoology. It seems pretty user-friendly, but there hasn't been a lot of use by our people within the district because we haven't paid for it.
So what about, I guess, do we know what those are though? And what are other districts doing, like in the ISD? Is everyone using Google Classroom or?
There's definitely widespread use of Google Classroom. I think many of our ISD counterparts use PowerSchool, so they're looking at Schoology. Schoology was just recently purchased by PowerSchool, so it's a new product that they've been selling alongside the PowerSchool tool. But I mean, there are other learning management systems, and I couldn't tell you what the share of the pie is that they all have. Google Classroom seems to be the most ubiquitous right now, probably because it's free, and you know, we're all thinking about our budget a little bit. But I'm hoping as a part of the next 3 years that it will be this coming year. I mean, obviously being a fairly stressful year, I'm not sure how much time we'll designate to the analysis of other systems, but the hope being within the next 2 to 3 years to bring to you an analysis of multiple systems and a recommendation from a teacher group.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can add, I'm supporting a group of K-12 camp, you know, at MSU that when we went to all online instruction, couldn't do summer camps at MSU. And so my group has been supporting them. And it does seem that when we present them with a bunch of options for platforms, that most or maybe even all of the programs are going with Google Classroom after they've test driven some of the other things. So it does seem to be a popular option for at least the people I'm working with.
Okay. I understand all of that. I just think that as we prepare for these different potential pathways for what the fall is going to look like, and having heard from public comment as we did from our teacher partners in terms of concerns that they have going back to school, to me, I don't know that there's a lot of better use of time right now than evaluating all the different platforms that are out there. I mean, granted, cost is obviously a challenge from a budget standpoint right now, but I don't know what that difference of cost is. I don't know what the feedback is in terms of one system over another. And the more that things can link together, so you're not re-entering a login and a password. I mean, that's just where I get concerned about people kind of throwing their hands up, you know what I mean, and not being able to do the work.
I think many of our staff, we have 334 teachers. I could check with the ISD and see how many, but many of them participated in Google Meet training, Google Classroom training through the ISD. In trying to balance this, there may be a tool that's more usable, but it would require training and it would be a whole new learning curve. And I am under the assumption that adding another layer, I mean, our teachers already have to learn PowerSchool coming back next month. So adding another layer of learning technology on top of them just seemed like an unnecessary stress when they'd invested so much in building Google Classroom in the spring.
I mean, yeah, as long as that's the feeling of our teachers and that's how they feel, then that's fine. So, okay, thank you, Jess.
Jessica, not to belabor the point, but will you explain to me, so what do we gain by adopting Google Classroom? If you're saying you don't want to ask them to learn something new, if they're already using Google Classroom, then I'm just not sure what the point of this vote is. And my big concern is that you're going to come next year and want us to use something else so that we can make this comparison.
Yeah, no, we might. So the intent for this year, for this particular adoption, is for consistency for the 2021 school year. I had definitely heard from the community in the community survey that it was much easier for families if every child was using Google Classroom than to navigate multiple platforms.
Mhm.
So that's a very consistent, and we've been getting that feedback for a long time. And so I feel like for this coming school year, Google Classroom is the most well-known by our parents as well as our teachers. I'm not guaranteeing that we won't come to you in 1, 2, 3 years and want to purchase, because it's expensive. I mean, the quote we got for Schoology was, I think, $40,000 a year. So we would have to come to you anyways because it's an expensive purchase to shift away. I feel like we're in a place where we need to be adaptive and flexible. And one good thing about learning management systems is, honestly, you guys, they all kind of do the same thing. They allow you to post things to kids, get them back, grade them, give feedback, and usually there's a place for a feed. So I don't feel like by using Google Classroom this past spring or this year that it's a waste in knowledge. I think it's growing an understanding of how to teach through a platform. But with that said, I think Google Classroom is the easy answer for next year. Not just easy to make right now, but less stressful on my teachers. But I can't guarantee that in a couple years we won't be ready to launch into a different platform.
Okay, thank you. So you're saying, I think I've heard this. You're saying that this is the easiest way to go for teachers, and you feel like Holt teachers support this move because it's the most easy to adjust to.
Absolutely. I'd say it's the most accessible for them right now. Absolutely. They don't need training on it. They've all set up something in it already, so they can get into it. Probably some of them have already, starting to set up their classroom for next year, put materials in there. That comfort level with it, I think, reduces the anxiety about using it. And I definitely want to do whatever we can to reduce anxiety going into the fall.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. And sorry to interrupt you, Amy, but I would love to hear a little more conclusively that the majority of our, 78% of our teachers want us to use Google Classroom. I'd like to know that, because when you say $40,000, I recognize the budget situation that we're in, but for 5,500 kids, that's a little over $7 a kid. And if the best option for our teachers and our students costs $40,000, then, but if they say they want to roll, I don't know the different systems, but if they say they want to roll Google Classroom, I'm fine.
Ben, I could not get training for teachers between now and when school starts on any other system. So even if we were to choose right now as a team to adopt Schoology, they're not doing trainings right now because of COVID. They're not sending people to buildings, and to train on these things for 334 teachers requires a pretty robust training process. So I guess either we adopt Google Classroom for next year, or we agree that we're going to give teachers autonomy to choose whatever system they want next year. Those are the only two options I'm really seeing on the table right now. Because in 4 weeks, given all the other stuff that we're designing right now, I can't get into people's hands the training on a new system.
Okay. And so clearly we'll end up adopting it then if this is the best option right now. I'm not talking about from now until then, but we knew it was likely that we'd be in this boat for a long time. If Google Classroom is the best option, then, and that's what our teachers think is best, then let's do it. So I'll make the motion to support and adopt Google Classroom for the 2021 school year.
Can I ask a clarifying question before I support?
You can support, and then we can ask the question.
I'll support. My question is, are we going to forbid teachers from using a different platform if they choose? We're going to say you have to use Google Classroom, or something that can integrate into Google Classroom.
Yes. So right now, the teachers, the second to last bullet, teachers can still embed other instructional technology within their classroom.
But they have to be able to launch it from the classroom.
Classroom is the platform by which a parent would access all the stuff that a teacher wants a kid to access.
Because I'm thinking of things like Padlet and some of these other things that some teachers are using, and
totally
I think that they can launch those from Google.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, anyway, yes, I second the motion, or I already have, I guess.
Yeah. I have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? Ms. Dalton, do a roll call.
Sure. President Perry,
Yes.
Trustee Roble,
Yes.
Trustee Holgren,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Treasurer Bakken.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. And going forward, I'm sure there will be many updates on how all these things roll out. So slide 7, just digging in a little bit into the cultural competence piece. I'd mentioned this earlier that we want the cultural competence lens to be embedded with all our district goals. So while I talk about targets and feedback and instructional technology and all that, it's all through the lens of creating the most equitable learning experience. And I don't mean that in a way of like, oh, all kids will have the same experience. I mean it as we know where all kids need to be. They actually should all have different experiences because they need different things. So as we look through this, part of our goal this year will be the equity and access teams designing an action plan around what PD we want to focus with staff in order to increase awareness around instruction as well as building classroom communities. There have been a lot of questions about how do I build a classroom community online? If we go remote, how do I continue to support students' mental health, engage with them? And that will continue to be a focus of our PD throughout the year as well. So the last 3 slides are updates. As much as I can update you, you know, we had some CARES money, some federal grant money came in during the 1920 school year. We anticipate there may be some during the 2021 school year. From the curriculum office perspective, one of our #1 focus areas has been to increase the number of Chromebooks in buildings for students to use. We issued thousands of Chromebooks this past spring, and I'll be honest, we got like 95% returned. The ones we didn't get back, there's families who I think they'll probably bring them back in the fall. We just haven't been able to get a hold of people. There haven't been a lot of repairs, some missing keys here and there, but it's been, I think, a pretty good experience. I'm confident in our community that we can issue those and it will go okay. So we've increased the total number of devices, purchased quite a few. I think we'll be in a good spot going into the fall where if we needed to issue some to students to take home, we would be able to do that. Other areas for CARES money that we've allocated funds to: special education supports, personal protection equipment, which I'm sure you're all aware, and then reviewing how we will support the social emotional needs of students coming back in the fall. Any questions on CARES money? And there's more coming. I think there's a little holdup with that money, a little bit of politics, but we're hoping that it'll trickle down to us. So I shared this slide, just listening to the thinking around the reopening, and it's both overwhelming, but also a little heartening. Like, this is happening nationwide. So I'm on a couple groups on Facebook that are not just, there's one that's like Save Michigan Educators, but there's also some national groups, NEA groups that are sharing the concerns nationwide about this. And I don't know if you guys saw, like, Detroit Public Schools opened up for summer school today, and they've received a lot of pushback. So there's a lot of information coming at us. And as a district, as a central office team, we've wanted to be as collaborative as possible. We're gathering information constantly. Emails that come in, like I said, the Facebook statements, I'm taking notes. So as of right now, our plan is around how to get the most comprehensive document created as we can. So this was just to give you dates. It's a calendar of what we've done. We've met with the Holt Education Association several times to get perspective on the teaching and learning component. We've taken the governor's plan, that 63-page document, and copied and pasted pieces, like the required pieces, into a Holt document. So trying to get all the pieces we have to have in there. We have ordered personal protective equipment. My big concern is, with us being as large as we are, that we won't be able to get all that we need. So we've been ordering lots of materials. We meet tomorrow. We have a whole day session with the Holt Education Association to not just discuss teacher contract, but also to work on the language of our reopening plan. Our hope is to get a draft of this plan. I mean, we have kind of a skeleton draft right now, but a draft in front of people for feedback. We just talked about today, the goal being that we get it in front of lots of groups for feedback, and then hopefully a final version, PDF style version, that we can bring to you guys at the August, I think 10th is our August board meeting. So you would see it before the board meeting. You're on my list of groups to offer feedback, and I don't know, there's rules about all of us getting together. I think we'd have to have a special meeting to do that. But the plan is to get it in front of you very soon.
Thank you for this update. I just had a question about, there was a little bit of a misstep between the parent survey that went out asking about online and not informing our staff on that. And so I had a lot of contact about that. So what is your plan moving forward of sending out emails to staff around this plan and not counting on members of them to do that? Are we thinking of a weekly update or bi-weekly? Because we're adding stress to them by things going out and they're not aware of. And so I wanted to be sure that we are have a communication plan for them.
Yep.
This isn't just to you, this is to Dave, the whole team.
Yeah, and I don't know if David wants to speak to that too, but I was actually with a group of teachers the night that went out, and it was intended to go out earlier in the day, and we had tech problems, and gosh, it was just kind of like misstep after misstep. And we were able to clarify that the language was meant to be more tentative. But we did send a whole staff communication on Thursday with the intention of sending regular whole staff communications from here on out that give a little bit more insight than the peak of the week does.
Yes, I think from this committee, it really needs to happen. And I would, if you could include the board on those too, because we're the ones that are out in Kroger and then they're saying things, you know, I just want to be informed. And I know that that's all that they want too, because we want to back all that you're doing, because I know it's been a lot of work, but everybody is just on pins and needles, as you know. And so figuring out, I don't know if we could even over communicate right now because it changes daily. So thank you.
All right, David or anybody else want to add to the reopening update? I think I got most of it, but. All right, we'll move into concluding thoughts. I appreciate you guys listening to me talk for this long. I did not intend to talk for this long. Somebody had said earlier, it might have been Mr. Perry, that we're looking for a lot of flexibility this year, and we're balancing that with consistency. And that's been kind of our mantra from the curriculum office for a long time, that we want consistency to ensure an equitable experience, but we also honor, respect, and really value the innovative mindsets of our staff and teachers. We want them to have the flexibility to do great things. So we're really trying to balance that consistency and flexibility. And this year, like my mentor teacher when I was a student intern was Jerry Gillette. And he used to say, for those who know Jerry Gillette, he had lots of sayings. He used to say, well, they don't teach you this in teacher school, Jessica. And this whole experience has been one of those, they don't teach you this in teacher school. And I think we're really just trying to lean on each other for flexibility, ensure that we are hearing each other. And I just want everyone to know that we are hearing the emails that come in, and our hope is to simplify PD this year so that teachers feel like they're not as overwhelmed with new things. But you know, new decisions every day. I keep telling everyone, like, I can plan maybe for today, maybe for tomorrow, but after that, I mean, things are changing rapidly still, so we're doing our best. And that is all I have. Lucky.
Jessica, I just want to pop in on a broad comment, and this relates kind of to everyone as we deal with this, and a follow-up to what you said. You know, I appreciate all the work you're doing. I know that I asked a lot of questions there, and it's hard for all of us, and we don't know the answers. I understand. I want to know what's going to happen, but we don't know what's going to happen, and we're trying to be flexible. And I hope that through this process that everybody has learned a little bit of patience and empathy with each other. And you are doing a great job. You know, I think everyone's doing a great job. That doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes, and we're not going to stub our toe and say, hey, if I had that to do over, I would have done it differently. And I think that's okay to say. You know, everyone who's on this call, whether you're an administrator, a teacher, community member, board member, I think we all want the best for kids. I don't think, I know that. And this is going to be hard. And I appreciate our teachers and their patience. So I just want to say that, as much as, I ask some of the questions about the platforms and stuff like that, because I want to make sure we're doing the best we can. And it's not that I don't doubt that you are, but, these are just those questions that we get asked and we want to have a good understanding. So I appreciate everybody's hard work.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jessica.
Welcome.
Deputy Ballinger, Dr. Hornak, is he on with us? Do you know?
Yep, I'm here.
Yes,
Okay.
he is.
You want to talk to your SRO report?
Yeah, not much here. So I responded to 72 calls for service. Now I mentioned it last month, but I remind you, I am back out on regular road patrol, so those were not 72 calls for service in the district. That was all out on the road. 12 school checks, 19 hours of community policing, and 10 hours in training. Probably the biggest highlight from this past month was June 12th, Diamonddale Elementary had their end of school parade, and Miss Barker asked me to be a part of that. So we got to parade from Diamonddale all through Diamonddale, a little bit of South Lansing, and up into Delhi there. Really cool to see all the kids out and about, hand out candy, and celebrate the end of the school year with them. Another thing, point of interest from the community policing side of things, is there's actually a group of Holt Junior High students who had a Black Lives Matters demonstration out at the Holt Square at the end of the month, and myself and my partner Deputy Holleran, who's a big part of the junior high, went out and we visited with them, had some really nice conversations with them, and probably positive things moving forward. So that was really good. That's about all I have. Happy to answer questions as always. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Hornak, are you doing the HR report, or is Pete on? I can't see everybody on these squares.
Hey,
So.
we're going to swing this one to Dr. Quinlan.
Oh, that's right.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi. I just wanted to thank everyone for your warm welcome. I'm really looking forward to working with all the many different groups and teams, including HEAT, that was discussed tonight, to identify, support, and take action for high expectations and equitable outcomes for Holt Public Schools and all of our stakeholders. It's a passion, and I'm looking forward to the challenge and the opportunity. In terms of the report you have, just highlighting, we did have 3 hires this month, 2 of which are transfers to new permanent positions within the district. And if you notice on there, we're maintaining 1 for extra help. The specific rep report, there's some specific permissions and the time spent on that report that the employee is doing the extra help with to make sure that critical document is accurate for reporting purposes.
All right.
Dr. Quinlan, I have a question. Can you tell everybody what the rep report is, please? The Registry for Educational Personnel.
You know, that's a really great question, Jen. I know some of it. I don't know all of it. This is day 4 on the job for me, but it has to do with teacher certification, has qualifications, ensuring certification aligns with what they're teaching and in front of students. I know, so there's a lot of different parts of it, but you know, we get our report back and we have to make sure we have everything in alignment.
Yep, you nailed it. Good job.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions for Aaron? If not, we'll move to the superintendent's evaluation, and Vice President Colgan, I'll kind of tag team with you on this one.
Yeah, so as you know, last month we collected input from the board and we connected it to the board goals this year. So, because in the past we haven't had both of those to work from. So we made a document to connect each of the elements for Marzano, connecting it to the board goals, and we collected input. And with COVID-19 going on and all of the, I don't know if it's a statutory or whatever it is that they're saying that the evaluation's been impacted this year. So whatever the evaluation rating was from last year will continue under this year. So Dr. Hornak was effective, and in a Google folder, which I'll work with Christine to get into our SharePoint, I sent you guys all a link of his evaluations from the last several years, and Dr. Hornak put together what he was evaluated in 2017, 18, 19, 20, and then 18, 19, 19, and 20. So you can see that 3-year trend, and there really hasn't been a change from last year. The one area that we had growth was around budget and that, and as you know, Dr. Hornak has taken upon him to look into budget and become more familiar with that, especially with the bond going on. And then one area that I think that it's been a theme with the board continued is around communication. And I know that we've been talking about how do we support him. Externally, we feel like it's going well, but internally, we still need some work there. And so how do we move forward with that? And then I open it up to the board, whatever. So all of the comments you guys put into the feedback form will go directly in there, though I will not change the words. And that's what I've done the past 3 years, just so you know that moving forward. But please add whatever you'd like to add.
All right, with that, I would recommend that we extend Dr. Hornak's contract. As you know, it's a 3-year rolling contract. So we would add 1 more year that would be out till 2023. And I've spoken with Dr. Hornak about compensation, and that contract language and the compensation would remain the same in 2021 fiscal year as it is in 1920, similar to what the same flat, no increase rate that the rest of our administrators have taken.
I'll make a motion for a 1-year extension to the 3-year contract with no changes as described by President Perry.
I'll second, but then I have a question, please.
I have a first and second. Further discussion?
Are all administrators in the administration building 1-year or 2-year rolling contracts?
It varies. I didn't quite get to investigate the total on this, but in a first year, it's a 1 year. And I believe after they have a year of successful employment, it goes to a 2. Pete, can you confirm?
No.
Okay. There you go.
Fair enough.
Actually, it says for the first 2 years in a new position, it will be a 1-year contract, and thereafter goes to a 2-year roller. So a number of our building administrators are still on 1-year contracts, and our more senior people are on 2-year contracts.
Is it reevaluated every year and then rolls into a 2nd year, Pete?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Ms. Dalton, if we could do a roll call. You're on mute, Amy.
Sorry. Treasurer Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Callaghan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren,
Yes.
Trustee Roble,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Yeah, we have you for another 3 years at least.
I'm not going to let you go. You may not leave.
Moving to section 8, Ms. Cosgrove, do we have any of the budget left?
Not a penny, actually. This is the month that you just see the cash flow report. We are in the process of closing up the year end at June 30th. So we do have to make accounting gymnastics. We have to make receivables for the state of Michigan state aid payment that we're going to be. And we have just actually completed last week rolling all of the teacher contracts. So their obligations, they have completed those in June, but they have been asked to be paid over the summer. And so we have to accrue those. So we're in the process of doing all of those to be prepared for the auditors that are coming. So because that balance and those balances change on a daily basis as we do the journal entries, we do not present the budget to actual. In saying that, there is somewhat of a special situation this year. We know that the state of Michigan has a budget deficit. You adopted a budget that absorbs our portion of that $650 per pupil. And when we talked about it at the June meeting, I said, if the law changes, if the per pupil allocation changes, if we get federal money, we will adopt a new budget for 1920 and for 2021. I was pretty convinced that we were going to have it. Both the House and the Senate issued legislation on the funding package that was exactly the same wording, and it said that it would make that federal adjustment and the release of funds by July 15th, which is Wednesday. That package, both of them were released right before the governor spoke on her package, and there has been no movement. And so we still do not have any changes on the revenue side of it. So at this point in time, I would say again, that we could do that in August as we prepare to close our books. I would always, as you could see in the memo that I had sent you on your monthly package, we do present at the August our closed books that is being prepared for the auditors, and the auditors come in the week after we present to you. On the Michigan School Business Officials listserv that goes out, there is chatter. Are you going to update your budget? Are you not going to? If they pass legislation, if they release federal funds. And some people are just going to say nope, and others are trying to assess that. So we'll walk forward through that. We do have other situations that we have encountered in the CARES Act that Jessica talked about, where we got over $500,000. There was allocation in there, and Steve Netzel Curriculum, they submitted the application. It had Chromebooks in there, it had personal protection equipment in there, and of course, it was completed and approved around the end of June. There was lots of language from the federal government, how flexible you need to be. All you have to do is you can say, this is my first attempt at what I think I'm going to spend the money on. And then you can amend it, and you can amend it again. And there's a large portion in there for the Chromebooks that would be added. We ordered those Chromebooks on June 15th. We were promised that they would be here in 6 to 8 weeks, and they arrived before June 30th. So we do not have any budget in there. Along with that, we also had the refresh that you did for the 2021 budget. Along with that, said it was going to be 6 to 8 weeks. Those were ordered on June 15th also, and they came in before June 30th. So we have, so we have 2 large purchases that there is budget for there, but they are not in the budgets of the year that those devices arrived. So we have that issue, and we also have an issue that more than likely we will have an adjustment to our state aid that is not adopted in the budget either. It would be my recommendation that in August we can clean that budget up and make it, or what will happen is that will be explained in our financial statements that are issued under the management and discussion agreement. So we can talk about that some more. But I wanted you to be aware of that. The other item that we have been seeing as an update is that we have been directing Rick to order PPE. You have a large amount of your staff that are going to the county work groups. Rick is in a group, our transportation director is, Steve and Jessica are, Dr. Hornak is. And so those groups are starting to get organized in what would be that county, what they feel as their best practice. Doesn't mean the whole public schools will adopt any of that. It just means that we are starting to see consensus around the science and phase 4 and 5 and you know, those types of discussions. Your directors, your boots on the ground are not making decisions about what will be happening, but there are lots of orders so that when the decisions are made, when you turn around and finally say, do we have that? We have that. And I say that, and I've written some things down here. We do have Evident Food Service. He has been working with Jessica and Steve, how we're going to do breakfast, how are we going to do lunch. Transportation, how are we going to get kids on the bus? How are we going to get them off? Are we going to have thermometers? Are we going to take temperatures? What happens when a little kiddo stands at the bottom of the bus and says, I'm not going to wear a mask, and really having those masks available, like we have one for you, because sometimes a kid will say, I'm not going to, when their parents don't have the ability to buy one. And so the hand sanitizers being purchased, the masks are being purchased. We have enough face shields for all of our staff, frontline staff, 500 of those. Actually, Rick had the foresight even before our lockdown in March to order sanitizing guns. We have guns, those cleaning guns that spray everything, and tape that we have done. Most of those things that have arrived already. Oh, one other thing, fans. Rick Brown is looking for fans to move air within our buildings. And so especially those that do not have air conditioning. It doesn't mean that we have decided this is how we're going to go, but we are going to have the equipment that we are ready for those things if the kids come back, whenever they come back. That's not decided. We're just going to be prepared. And when I say that, one of the large things that we have, and a portion of it was on the original CARES Act, was desk shields. And so that would be another layer. I'm not saying that kids were going to be mandated to wear a mask, but if they're not, they will have a desk shield around them that will protect them from the others and the teacher and them with each other too. Those are fairly expensive items. The call to arms to order those was before the governor issued her orders and the legislature did their orders. And so we are working off the CARES Act, and this is flexible. You can order them. We knew we had the money that we would be able to alter that. Those have been ordered so that we would have that additional protection. And Dr. Hornak said the amount in total is $80,000. It can be covered by the CARES Act. 50,000 of it is already allocated. It would be amended to say the 80. But Dr. Hornak had said, don't we need to go through the board? And so we were focused on that. So as I read the board policy 6320, it does say in the first that we would be in accordance with all of the state and the federal guidelines. And if I go to the state guidelines, there is a section in MCL 380.1267. It does talk about emergency situations, but it is repairing. It is not emergency situations as COVID. I can't imagine that they would say that. So our plan was to get all of our things in order and bring those to you with pictures of the classrooms and preparation of teachers in the classrooms, the options that we have for them, whether it be a shield or a mask or both. and even some discussion of aprons for our paras that have sleeves on them for biters and spitters and those types of things. And so in that, we did not come to you. Rick has spent, well, I can tell you, Dr. Hornak and all of us are inundated every day with solicitations of buy this, buy this. Rick has piles that he has circled the best that he has. The ones that we have ordered on the desk shields have the lowest cost so far. And so I'm not sure if we're in a bidding situation for these because all you get are solicitations. We ordered them early to get ahead of the rush because at one point you can't get masks, you can't get shields. And so in those types of things, Rick, instead of the shields for the secretaries that are there, he is buying plexiglass and making his own. So the majority of the items that have been ordered, Rick has been able to purchase within his own budget in the 1920 school year. And any extra cost would be overcome by the lack of utilities. So he has a lot of capacity in his utilities. But that is really, instead of the monthly financial packet, I wanted to update you on where we were.
Thank you for the update and working forward, but I'm just wondering if we could have got an email about that moving forward. I mean, it's just, I feel like it's a reactive thing here, and I know you said maybe you should be working through the board, but that's great information to share with us now, but it sounds like you maybe have been working on it for several weeks, and if it's just an email saying we're purchasing these things, and I think even out to our staff, Kim, because we had those two teachers that spoke in front of the meeting, that if they knew that this was happening or they're preparing, I think could alleviate some of the questions and things. So if we can move forward doing that, I appreciate it.
You are absolutely correct on all points.
And if we could, you know, you mentioned you're going to get us pictures and whatnot of, you know, some of that PPE equipment and the desk shields. If we could get that out there for the public too, so they know what that looks like, you know, what a desk shield would look like, maybe those aprons that would, you know, people would be wearing and whatnot. I think it just sort of answers some of the questions of, you know, everybody's uneasy about, you know, this coming fall. The more I think we show and demonstrate what that might look like, I just think it just helps with everybody's reservations.
Mr. Perry, if I may, we plan on setting up a room, maybe a grade level at K6 and then a 7-8 and then a high school room with all of the PPE, with the hand sanitizer, pump, the face shields, the way the desks are going to be, the red X's for the 6-foot social distancing. And then I believe we're kind of talking about maybe putting some videos out also onto the website.
Awesome.
So we just don't have everything here yet. That was one of the reasons that I was in such a hurry, and I did try to get the best price for the district, and I believe I did, was that all these suppliers are telling me if you don't get it by this date, the fans, for instance, if they told me if I don't have them ordered by Friday, we will not have them for the start of school. So I'm not going to panic, but I am, you know, vigorously looking for the best deal and want to get that order in for the district.
Okay.
Rick and Kim, to piggyback off of what Laura and Mark just said, have you spoken with teachers about not only what might be mandated, but what they would like to see in the classroom? And Rick, that's a good point. If you're setting up a classroom, are we bringing teachers through to give their feedback on what exactly is going to happen in a classroom if we go back? I mean, it's important that we get their feedback. They're the people that are going to be facing this every day, not us.
Right.
Them.
So Jessica and Steve had been helping us with that. And after Rick had done his initial, what he felt, he came back from his your county meetings. Jessica has been talking with teacher groups about that. Hers was and I can see she's still on here. Theirs was a collective sigh from the teachers, like, I like that, you know. And so the management of those desk shields in the classroom were some of their discussions. Can you help us on that, Jessica?
Sure. Just by the nature of the friend groups I have are all teachers. So we'd been asking people about the desk shields specifically. So that's the conversation I had, because they're not cheap. And we were joking one group about kids, holding them up and whacking each other with them in the hall. You gotta laugh about these things. But when I said, no, seriously, if you had a mask and student, would you want the desk shields? And they're like, well, yeah, like if a kid sneezes in class, having the desk shield is way better than not having the desk shield. So it was informal conversation. I also have the staff survey that went out in June, and I just resent the link last week. And there was feedback about the more layers between was better. So yeah.
Are we able to see that survey that went out to staff? And then I guess my question still wasn't answered as to whether or not we're bringing teachers in to see what they think will work and won't work.
We just talked about that today too. We've had several requests that I need to respond to of staff members who want to know specifically, even though they know we ordered face shields, they want to see it. So we talked about making a sheet that shows all the things that we've purchased, so they know, does it fit their needs, or do they need, we've said, do staff want masks and face shields? So I think Jen Robel is absolutely correct that we need to share, these are the things we have, what more do you need? And because some people might have unique circumstances.
And then I would just like to share that we have teachers on our community task force, and we have committed to taking field trips into our classrooms, and we'll get their informal feedback on the site in the moment when we take those field trips.
Thank you.
Again, I just am feeling like we're being reactive. They should be in on the planning and the purchasing. Come on, Holt. Come on, you guys. I know you're sitting up there doing your best work, but they need to be at the table with you guys. That's what they want.
I agree.
That's what I'm hearing. So you're hearing my voice because of the 350 people out there you're telling them what they need instead of having their voice there. I know, Dave, you have a community group. I know Jessica has people on friend group, but that isn't all employees. So how are you systematically being sure you're hearing all their voices?
We are meeting with the union as well. And we met last week, we met the week before, and we meet again tomorrow.
And how many people is that, Dave?
They have a team of 6 right now.
Okay, that's 6 of our 350 plus all of your other employees. All of those employees want to have a voice in this. And so we got to really think proactive instead of saying, here's what we purchased for you. Does it work for you? What do you need?
Laura,
So
I do believe I did get the masks and 20,000 level 1 masks and the shields. That way we were kind of covering whatever they might want. And then also the plexiglass. So there's kind of three or 4 different options just so we're covered.
Again, you guys are doing awesome work up in your space, but it's not getting the input of the people that are going to be in the front lines. That's what I'm just trying to stress. And that's what I've been hearing from them. You guys are doing all the right moves. We just got to be sure that the people that are really going to be impacted, the 2 teachers questions that we had prior could have been answered if they knew what you guys were really doing, but they have no idea unless you're a friend group with someone or you're on a union, which is 6 people. What I'm saying is we have a lot of employees that are just questioning, and you guys have the answers, but we're not communicating with them. And I know it changes every day, but we got to figure out every week what we're going to do to share with them. Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cosgrove. Dr. Hornak, the calendar, anything there that you would like to highlight?
Yes, I'm going to make an effort to try to, do some type of a soundbite on what has changed. It is extremely fluid. The situation we're dealing with is extremely, extremely fluid. With that, I would like to just again highlight that on July 15th, we have COVID testing from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Holt High School. You can walk up if you feel comfortable. If you prefer to stay in your car, that is also another option. And our start date, again, is to be determined. Okay, so we are meeting again with our union tomorrow to continue to work through many of the things that we just discussed, as well as start, continuing to plan for next school year. It's very unlikely we'll be starting the balanced calendar the 1st of the year, or excuse me, the 1st of August, and more likely at some point mid to late August for all of our students, depending on the current environment.
All right, we'll move to old business. Nothing there.
I have one issue, please, President Perry.
Yep.
You know, and we've talked about this over the course of the last year, but I just want to remind the board that community eligibility provision information was released on May 1st, and the original deadline, the normal deadline in normal circumstances is June 30th for a district and individual buildings in the district to commit to the community eligibility provision. That has been extended to August 31st, but we still have not heard anything about that. So I'm hoping that before that August 31st deadline, we will be presented with what the opportunities are available in Holt Public Schools to participate in the community eligibility provision. In addition to that, I just want to point out that the summer meal information on our website is not up to date. I know there is a link in the peak of the week that has updated information, but that's not what's on the website. The website only goes to the end of June. So if we could get that attachment from the peak of the week put on the website, that would be useful. And then a third thing under that food service piece is, my understanding is there's a parent guardian meal pickup waiver, and which allows parents or guardians to pick up the meals for the students. I know lots of districts in the area advertise that with their meal pickup information, and I just wonder what our numbers would look like if we considered doing that. I'm sure you all saw there was another article in the Lansing State Journal this week, or at the end of last week, about the meals in different districts. And I'd really like to know that Holt's doing the best that we can to distribute as many meals as we can to families in need. And I'm just wondering if that's a missed opportunity, if people understand that they don't have to get their kids out to actually be there for the transaction to pick up meals.
Actually, Mr. President, I have something to piggyback off on that. I'm kind of curious as to why we didn't apply for the 5-day food service waiver instead of just the 2-day, to serve meals twice a day instead of 5 days a week during the summer.
I believe we have the ability to do 5, but we are consolidating. So when we give meals on Mondays, we give three meals, or actually 6 meals. Breakfast and lunch for Monday, breakfast and lunch on Tuesday, breakfast and lunch on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, it's breakfast and lunch for Thursday and breakfast and lunch on Friday.
Okay, what if they're homeless and they don't have anywhere to put that food? So wouldn't the 5-day be better than the 2-day?
Yeah, are you making accommodations for that? I mean, maybe you do the twice a week for the majority of those individuals, but I guess the question would be is if that's needed, is it provided?
It is provided. I've made house drops. We have an employee who's actually volunteering to make porch drops. We can re-examine this, of course, to that end. Some districts are distributing all on like a Monday, and they do 7 days. And we have, just for our staffing and the outreach, we've gone to 2 days a week. But we do accommodate anyone who wants food. Like I said, I've been doing porch deliveries when needed.
So staffing, sorry, David, for staffing, low staffing, are you talking about food service, or we can't bring in, are you talking about food service employees? You can't bring in paras to do work, or teachers?
You bet. We can. the gist of it is we're trying to be as efficient as we possibly can. If we need to expand out to 5 days, we can consider that. We were at 5, I believe we were at 5 in the beginning, and it seemed like people were not coming back on a regular basis. So then when we broadened it to 2 days a week, the numbers again increased a little bit. To that end, we'll look at that again.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe just this is where the communications and marketing plan around something as important as food would be helpful, along with the extra staff to help with it.
I do believe that when we were on real lockdown and, you know, people were encouraged not to leave their house, the idea of fewer times to go out makes sense. That's a great point, though, Trustee Roble, about people who don't have storage facilities for that. That had not occurred to me, but that's a good point.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move to new business. And as I mentioned, our committee of the whole, we didn't get to talk about
and narrow that to those whose parents made payments to Isabella Grant's Dummy Corporation.
Somebody want to mute themselves? Thank you. So here's my thoughts of, you know, how to go about this. We sent out RFPs to a number of contractors and vendors for the 3 respective areas that we're looking to partner with. And from that group, we narrowed down those firms and individuals that we wanted to interview. And we did that last week. And then at the end of the week, we, you know, accumulated all of that information, and that got out to you, I believe, on Saturday to take a look at. So the process tonight, I think that I'd like to do is, if it's okay with you guys, is to first look at the owner's representative first. And with that, determine, you know, how our contract might read, whether that be at risk or not at risk, or said another way, the construction manager as a constructor, or the construction manager as an advisor. So we need to look at those 2 different roles and whether or not we thought there was value in hiring an owner's rep. And then what I'd like to do is move to the architect discussion and the CM discussion. And I think it's going to be of value for us to use the owner's rep to help us pick both the architect and the CM. But maybe tonight that we could narrow down the field of the architect and the CM so that, you know, there's not as much work to do for the owner's representative. So, you know, with that, I'll open it up to discussion.
I guess I'll just say, President Perry, I'll let others chime in on their thoughts with regard to the CM at risk or the CM advisor, as well as the owner's rep. But I agree with that process. I think that if we are going to engage an owner's rep, and then I assume what you're suggesting, President Perry, is we would at least determine the owner's rep today.
Correct.
And then in terms of, and then narrow down the field from 3 to 2 on the AE and the CM and engage them to do some further analysis there, and then give us a recommendation essentially as they become that extension of staff. Am I saying that right, just to formulate in my own mind?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I agree with that process.
Any other discussion on that? If not, then let's talk about, again, together, the owner's representative and how we want our contract to read, whether it's at risk or whether the CM is an advisor. In I don't know, pipe in either Ben or Kim as far as, if one of you guys or both of you guys could want to give a rundown of the difference between those two.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do it. Kim can fill in the blanks, but then I'll be interested to hear from my board colleagues in terms of their thoughts. So our RFP for construction manager went out with the CM serving in that advisory role, where the contracts with the subcontractors would be in the name of us as the owner. So they would still identify those contractors would be performing the work, but then the contracts would actually be in our name. They would still, they being the CM and or owner's rep and or AE would review the invoices as they're submitted and make sure the work has been completed as stated and kind of give us an approved to pay. But then we're cutting all those individual checks to the subs. Also, as from a bonding standpoint, the bonding cost would be held by those individual subs who aren't going to have the leverage and size of bonding line and competitiveness as some of the larger CM firms. That's the typical advisory relationship. Now, it should be stated that Troon recommends that for the school districts that they work with, and they state that the majority of K-12 jobs that are being done these days, as high as 90%, are under that advisory agency type role in terms of CM, which then would make it less typical to engage an owner's rep in addition to a CM that's serving just in that advisory capacity. Although recognizing that some school districts do that. They do, Lansing Schools, for example, as their CM serving in an agency role and as an owner's rep. Under the at-risk structure, those contracts are held by the general contractor. So, and I shouldn't say general contractor because they're not serving in a hard bid GC type role, but so they're still a construction manager, but our relationship is with the construction manager and the subcontractor relationships are with the CM. So typically you can have, some savings in terms of the bonding cost. Also, who takes the role of that third party inspecting, especially if you have the CM serving at risk and then you engage an owner's rep, can have some savings there too. But it's for whatever reason in K-12 less typical to have the CM serve at risk. So I don't know if that was longer than you wanted or if there's other questions, but that's kind of the high level consideration. So you can add to that, Kim, if there's anything else.
No, I think we have talked about the at-risk, where the general construction manager holds the contracts for the trade contractors. And in Holt Public Schools now, we do not have the capacity, the tenacity, or the education to be able to vet, monitor, and manage the contracts with the trade contractors. And so it had been, if you did go to that at risk, a owner's rep fits quite nicely into that model of an at risk. So your construction manager is holding the contracts, but the owner's rep is an oversight at that. Or part of a third leg of a triangle, really, for all of the people that are working for the people of Holt Public Schools.
So again, our RFP that went out had the CM serving in the advisory capacity, but did state that we reserve the right to negotiate the contract with the CM serving at risk. So.
And I don't know, it's been pointed out, just the CM as an advisor with the architect, the CM, and an owner's rep. I think, Ben, you referred to it, as having too many cooks in the kitchen. It just seems like if we go to an owner's rep, that's exactly what we would be getting ourselves into. And the at-risk seems to be more conducive to an owner's rep, where they're just overseeing the general contractor, if you will, the CM, in their work. So I would see us, I see value in the owner's rep. It's a lot of money, but what they can bring to the table, and given that, everybody on this call, and this bond issue would probably last for 6 years, may not be there at the end of that 6 years. and the additional work that would be placed on Dr. Hornak, Kim, Rick, and others, there's a lot of value in that owner's rep, is I guess what I'm concluding.
I'm pretty comfortable with the idea of an owner's rep and then an at-risk CM. It just seems to be the most logical way to go about it. That's just my opinion. And after all those interviews, that did seem to be, to me, a pretty reasonable way to do it.
All right. So if that's agreeable, then, you know, board thoughts on an owner's rep as far as, you know, do you see us engaging with one?
I think we should have our owner's rep. That's for the only main reason is that we just can't have that expertise in-house. We can't guarantee that that's there for the continuation of the 6, 7, 8 years, however long it's going to take.
You know, I would like to say that I was hesitant, and, you know, I know in the finance committee, both, all three of you, Dr. Halburn, Mr. Perry, and Ben have heard me say, I'm not sure, why do you need it? It's just another person, there's another meeting. But I also, once I started to think about Rick and his crew and what the powerful position he will be in to not only have someone who is after the bond to be able to continue to talk about the teaching and the learning of our own staff and custodians and the commissioning of all that new equipment. And they would be another resource for Rick to be able to connect all the systems that are going to be, have to be improved, replaced, and is there for that continued support. And so even after, if all of the work is 6 years, if it's 4 years, that, you know, the most important piece is, does it work when everybody else walks away? So I think that that is the biggest support of an owner's rep.
Yeah, you know where I stand. I mean, from our very first meeting we had with Troon, I felt it was critical that we have an owner's rep, that we have that short-term extension of staff that's there to help David, Rick, Kim, you know, with change orders and everything else that's unpredictable that's going to come up, as an expert and someone that's got that background, where they come from a CM background and they understand that type of work. I absolutely agree. And I would recommend as well the CM to serve in an at-risk capacity.
So with that, then I want to give everybody a chance. We had 3 vendors, if you will, for owner's rep, not in any order: Barry, Roney, Tehan, LTD, and Moore, Trosper. So if we want to go around the table, or if somebody just wants to start out and give their, you know, thoughts, and board members, you've seen everybody else's comments as well.
I was pleased with all of the presentations. I would feel very comfortable working with any of those firms. I usually in interviews that you narrow things down. I don't know that it narrowed, you know, they're all very good, very strong. I think I'm the lone outlier on my first place ranking, and I'm more than happy to change that. So that was very close between my top 2 candidates. I would not be offended at all if or you know, put out at all if I were to change that. So if I do that, then it seems like it's a pretty consistent first place choice.
Yeah, it certainly does look that way. You know, I'll just speak to Morris Trosper. You know, I thought Ted Moore came in with a lot of high energy. I like the fact that, you know, there's a team there. rather than one individual. And just the answers and the information he presented, he obviously, has done his homework. Sure, it helps that he lives in the district, but, that too, the firm's got skin in the game, if you will. So, but the other two, like Rob said, presented themselves very, very well as well.
Yeah, I will comment on Barry Rooney. I think he did a really nice job. It's a different type of owner's rep than Moore Trosper. Moore Trosper spent a lot more time focusing on the pre-bond work, and we're going to have strong pre-bond professionals with whatever AE firm and CM firm that we end up with. But I do think it matters. And Moore Trosper as a company, is a Delhi Township based company. They've done this work before successfully. They spent a lot of time as both a general contractor and general trades. They do have a team that's there. I think, but I do want to say to Barry Rooney in particular, and I think Jim Tehan did a nice job too, but Barry Rooney is very, very strong owner's rep, does a really nice job of engagement, with the firms, great team player, excellent background in K-12 education. He would be, he would be a successful pick if we landed there, but I will recommend Moore Trosper as well, just because I think everything that we get from some additional pre-bond assistance to the work after, they're the right firm. So I would be supportive of Moore Trosper also.
I'd agree with Ben. I don't think this is a one-person job, even though I have heard good things about the other two. I just think a team in this capacity is the best way to go.
I agree. I had to choose, and I chose Roney as my first pick. But again, that was more of wasn't necessarily a coin toss, but I was very, very happy with Moore Trosper's presentation, and I really appreciate that they're local, and they obviously are very committed to the schools. I have absolutely no problem with recommending that.
If that's the case, then I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we engage Moore Trosper as our owner's representative for the upcoming bond campaign.
Go ahead, Laura.
I have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? Kim, I take it that we will use Kevin to negotiate that, or have the contract language.
So I did, he had emailed me today and said, will you need my assistance? I thought that you guys could get through this part by yourself, and you did. And I had said to him, no, we don't, in a half joking manner, no, we don't. We need to have your time and pay for it when we negotiate the contracts. And he laughed and he said, that's why you go out for the RFP, because all the big stuff's already nailed down in your RFP. So yes, we will take it to the end, but a lot of the things you already told them what you wanted them to agree to.
Okay. So Ms. Dalton, can you do a roll call for us?
Of course. Treasurer Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren,
Yes.
Trustee Roble,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Well, why don't we take up the architect next? And I think if we could narrow it down to two firms that we would like to work with Moore Trosper on, choosing one of those two. And again, I'll open it up to, any board member and their comments about the three firms.
Can I just ask a point of clarification? And maybe this comes after the end. I know, Mr. Perry, you have told us on several occasions that you do not want us to get behind the 8 ball in this.
Yep.
I know when we pick the architect and the CM, we still have, well, whatever's left of July and August to have all of the architects and CMs in our buildings before we potentially put kids in there. And so I just wonder how long that decision will be made, because we do need to get to Treasury by January, which would mean your citizens committees have decided, you know, all that work is done to decide what your ballot language will be and what you go to Treasury with.
All right, so you've called me out on this because Dr. Hornak was actually going to do the dirty work. Actually, he's still going to do the dirty work. He's going to try to get a hold of Moore Trosper and see if they can have everything, you know, presentable to us by the end of July.
Special meeting.
Yeah.
What would Morris Trosberg be presenting?
Well, they would be looking at the difference between the contracts of, or the two companies. So like when you go back to the CM, now that we changed it to at risk, none of the numbers in our proposal were specific to at risk. They were at advisory. So what are those dollar amounts, or what are those percentage? I didn't say that.
So you just, so I guess just to reaffirm, you were saying by the end of July, our decision would be made so those people could enter our buildings in August?
Yes. Well, I mean,
Pending
around
them.
it.
Not really, because we'd still have to write contracts with them too. Okay.
Yeah, well, our goal would be Moore Trosper would be finished up by the end of July so that we could meet and he could present us with all the information that, you know, he's found. And in his presentation, that's what he wanted to do. As you remember, he saw the most value as far as being able to look over, you know, those two and, you know, present that information to us. I know it's a little bit longer, but at the same time, you know, I just, you know, these two vendors are very important to us, and they're going to be with us for 6 years.
And we heard from all the owners' reps during the interviews that ideally they would be part of that process. We even saw lots of the different presenters in all the fields showed kind of three, you know, spheres of architect, CM, and owner/owners rep. They're part of the team, and they all said they'd like to be part of that process. I don't want to speak for Moore Trosper, but I'm going to assume that because they're exceptionally familiar with, you know, I would say for sure our two finalists, but all three in the architect area, I'm assuming that they could pretty confidently today, if we asked them, you know, who they thought we should work with. But
Absolutely, not challenging, asking for clarity.
Okay, so back to the architect. Board members, do you know?
I guess just from an efficiency standpoint, I'll just share, you know, we pretty much, for most of us, had TMP or GMB 1 and 2. King Scott, I'd like to say I thought they did a really nice job. Dan and Brendan did a particularly good job with their presentations. They talked about that Epic MRA that I thought was great. So I think, while King Scott is a very strong firm with a lot of experience, unless anybody wants to champion them, it seemed like we were all pretty much trending toward TMP and GMB.
That's where I was going as well. I thought both TMP and GMB were, other than a handful of letters, very strong companies. King Scott, to me, I mean, they do a lot of work on the other side, on the west side of the state, but it seemed like we were just a little bit out of their area, out of their range, maybe. I just felt that GMB and TMP were more well resourced for what we're trying to do.
All right, any additional comments? Then both GMB and TMP will be the two that Ward Trosper will work with us on in choosing. So we'll move to the
Do we
CM.
need to vote on that, or is that just a consensus?
I think it's a consensus. But if somebody wants to make a motion, that's okay too.
I just didn't know what the procedure was. So
Well, I don't think we make a motion until we make the recommendation which one we're gonna go with, right? This is just narrowing it still. So
Yeah,
I don't know
that's
if we
what
need the motion.
Right.
right.
So let's move to CM. Ben, I like your approach. So
Yeah. Same kind of discussion here. I just think that while, you know, I appreciate the time that Skillman put into both their RFP response and their interview. They gave some strong answers, particularly the questions of managing cooks in the kitchen, of do's and don'ts of the bond campaign with the different advisors. They do a lot of K-12 work. And so while I appreciate Skillman's time and presentation, you know, Granger and Chrisman seemed to that was unanimous with all of us as top two. So I would not as a formal motion, but recommend we move Granger and Chrisman forward for Ward Trosper to give their recommendation on those two firms.
I agree with that.
anybody see different from that? Okay, so we'll move Granger and Chrisman to our finalist list for more Trosper to work with. So that brings us to closed session, in which we would need to have a motion and a vote to go into closed session for the purpose of labor contract negotiations.
Make a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of labor contract negotiation discussion.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Dalton, roll call.
Treasurer Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Holgren,
Yes.
Trustee Robo,
Yes.
President Perry.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Galbraith.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Oh, we do have some people. Hey, Dan.
Oh boy.
16.
All
17.
right. We are back in open session.
So President Perry, I know what our next agenda item is, but just before that, as we circle back to the CM discussion. So we've made a CM AE owner's rep. So we've made a decision on owner's rep. As it relates to that decision, the sooner that we could get the owner's rep, the RFP responses for the two AEs and CMs and move forward, the better, just so that they can be prepared to, you know, start to do their analysis and put together their recommendations and have those dialogues. I would recommend that.
Yep, understood. And Dr. Hornak, you'll get back with us as far as what Ted Moore can do.
Well,
what time frame?
I will see if we can potentially social distance safely and have Ted come into the office so that he can meet Kim and Rick and I, and we can talk through how to make sense of the contracts and what he advises moving forward. But I would echo the sense of urgency. If we can have a special meeting before the end of July to tidy this up, that would be helpful. That way we might be 2 weeks behind. We're not going to be 4 weeks behind.
Yeah, if you
once you
find that information, can you send that to the whole entire
You
board
bet.
as far as?
Yep, and then we'll potentially poll you to see if there's a good day. Could be first thing in the morning, you know, for that next board meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the key is before, you know, just connect with him, you know, and their firm, because they might not be as high priority on the meeting as they are on just seeing those RFPs from the other firms, so that they can start to dive into them. So, because they're extension of staff at this point. So. And then the only other comment that I have is as a general comment, you know, Peter, appreciate all your help and congratulations again to Dr. Quinlan on her role, you know, with the district in that lead HR position. But, you know, Peter, I hope that you be available to us as well, not only on the immediate, which I know you will, but if there's time from time in the future that we can pull you out of retirement for a week here or there as it relates to a future HR issue. I just appreciate all that you've done. And I still remember the very first board meeting that you attended, where I think you'd made a joke along the lines of hiding under your desk because it was some crazy.
That wasn't a joke. No.
Yeah, that's right. I don't even remember what it was, but
I thought okay, so I mean, I know we're in open session, but I thought it really happened.
Yeah. But I just think it would be such an aid to Dr. Quinlan, you know, as you know, she accelerates in this new role to have you as needed. I appreciate you very much, Peter.
I'm available, and I've tentatively planned on staying here till around the first of the year, and then I'll be available as needed thereafter. If Aaron's ready to run without me before then, I figure I work on a daily basis. So whatever the district needs within reason.
Can you do pay?
Wouldn't commit to 3 years. What?
Okay, that's enough of that. That's enough of that stuff.
That was funny.
All right, President Perry, if I may, then our last agenda item, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
First and a second. One last roll call, Ms. Dalton.
All right, Treasurer Bakken,
Yes.
Vice President Colligan,
Yes.
Dalton, yes. Trustee Hallgren,
Oh, yeah.
Trustee Robel.
Yes.
That's a yes on her behalf.
Okay, thank you very much. President Perry.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate all of you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.